Do you know that procurement is crucial in achieving our society's collective vision of a strongly rooted, comfortable, and secure life in the Philippines? Hello everyone, I'm Billy Bayong. Let me show you how our Procurement Policy Board innovates, adapts, and responds to our changing needs to enhance the procurement system and help the government work for us. An efficient, transparent, and competitive procurement system connects every Filipino to vital services from the government. This can help move more people out of poverty, gain access to better education, receive quality healthcare, and enjoy economic opportunities. These yield greater trust in government institutions and bring the country closer to achieving its national development goals. The Government Procurement Policy Board focuses on simplifying various processes to produce more successful procurement that contributes to the effectiveness and efficiency of the government. The board employs strategies to identify needs and implement projects. It refines and calibrates procurement policies, adjusting to emerging trends based on needs of procuring entities. It creates ways to capacitate practitioners to monitor effectiveness of our procurement systems, especially during national emergencies. The GPPB has strengthened the procurement process at the earliest stage, the planning phase. The board has issued bidding rules responsive to new laws and policies set by the government. GPPB has also streamlined the bidding process through the use of technology. GPPB has introduced guidelines to ensure timely procurement, especially during a national emergency. GPPB Technical Support Office pioneered initiatives to better assist procuring entities. Simple and competitive, transparent and accountable, monitored by the people. These make for an effective procurement system, responsive to the needs of the people. The GPPB, adapting, responding, innovating for nation building. To know more about procurement, visit gppb.gov.ph. Do you know that procurement is crucial in achieving our society's collective vision of a strongly rooted, comfortable, and secure life in the Philippines? Hello everyone, I'm Billy Bayong. Let me show you how our Procurement Policy Board innovates, adapts, and responds to our changing needs to enhance the procurement system and help the government work for us. An efficient, transparent, and competitive procurement system connects every Filipino to vital services from the government. This can help move more people out of poverty, gain access to better education, receive quality healthcare, and enjoy economic opportunities. These yield the country closer to achieving its national development goals. The Government Procurement Policy Board focuses on simplifying various processes to produce more successful that contributes to the effectiveness and efficiency of the government. The board employs strategies to identify needs and implement projects. It refines and calibrates procurement policies, adjusting to emerging trends based on needs of procuring entities. It creates ways to capacitate practitioners to better manage their procurement processes, monitor effectiveness of our procurement systems, and it adapts to the times, especially during national emergencies. The
like a song. I want more. I'm just thinking out loud. I don't know if I could ever go
How to
without
check? How
watermelon
to
sugar,
check?
watermelon sugar, watermelon sugar, watermelon sugar, watermelon sugar, strawberries.
Audio loud and clear.
Maybe you're the energy when you're ready, and the summer feeling getting washed away. Breathe me in, breathe me out. I don't know if I could ever go without watermelon sugar, 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 watermelon sugar. I just wanna taste it. I just wanna taste it. Watermelon sugar high. I just wanna taste it. I just wanna taste it. Watermelon sugar high. Tastes like strawberries on a summer evening, and it sounds just like a song. I want your belly, and that's my feeling. I don't know if I could ever go without. I don't know if I could ever go without watermelon sugar, 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 watermelon sugar. If I leave, leave it all. Will I run, will I run, will I be being unknown? Say what you like, say what you like, say it. Turn around, city lights fading out. It's time to let go. I will meet you halfway. We gotta move on. I will meet you halfway. It's time to let go. Gotta move on. I will meet you halfway. It's okay, don't be sad, sad or scared. You'll be fine, I'll be there, there on time. Yeah, yeah. Say what you like, say what you like, say. Oh, be who you wanna be who you wanna be. It's time to let go. I will meet you halfway. We gotta move on. I will meet you halfway. It's time to let go. We gotta move on. I will meet you halfway. It's time to let go. I will meet you halfway. We gotta move on. I will meet you halfway. It's time to let go. 600 years, I will still come through. Wait forever, wait for you. Baby, take the time you need, I will still wait for you.
A blessed morning to everyone. To start off, may I request the Zoom participants to give us a quick thumbs up so that may I know that I can hear you loud and clear. All right. On that note, we would like to welcome everyone to the online training for civil society organizations on Republic Act 9184 and its 2016 revised implementing rules and regulations. Before we get started, allow me to make a few reminders. First, please change your name here in Zoom using the required format, that is your company name underscore your full name, for us to properly identify you and monitor your attendance to this virtual activity. Please keep your microphones on mute during the lecture proper in order to maintain clarity and for us to properly manage the time. Additionally, please be informed that this virtual event is being recorded. Lastly, if you are experiencing, oh, I think we have some microphones open. So again, may I repeat, please keep your microphones on mute during the lecture proper in order to maintain clarity and for us to properly manage the time. Additionally, please be informed that this virtual event is being recorded. Lastly, if you are experiencing technical difficulties, please let us know through the Zoom chat box and a member of our technical team will directly coordinate with you to address your concerns. And if you have colleagues who were not able to get into our official Zoom participants, please be advised that this session is simultaneously being broadcasted live in our official Facebook page. Just visit our page at Government Procurement PH. At the end of the lecture proper, we will be having open forum. So we highly encourage the participants to raise your question all throughout the duration of this virtual activity using the Zoom chat box. Please be reminded that only questions related to the learning session shall be accommodated by the research speaker. And for our Facebook Live viewers joining us today, you may also drop your question through the comment section. We would like to remind as well our Zoom participants to please register to the online training management system of the GPPB PSO by visiting the link flashed in your screens and using the control number emailed to you by our event secretariat. Your registration in the OTMS will allow you to evaluate the research speakers for this virtual activity and the overall management of this online event, which will be our basis in the issuance of the certificate of webinar completion. Aside from the OTMS registration, we would like to request our Zoom participants to please accomplish the participants' profile sheet through Google Forms by visiting the link or scanning the QR code flashed in your screens. Rest assured that the information gathered from you will be treated with utmost confidentiality and in consonance with the provision of the Data Privacy Act. And finally, we would like to invite as well the participants to please do check the official social media accounts of the GPPB PSO to be updated on the latest policy issuances, future webinar schedules, and other important announcements of the GPPB TSO. All you have to do is just to like our Facebook page at Government Procurement PH, subscribe to our official YouTube channel at Government Procurement PH, and follow us on our Twitter account at Government Procurement PH. And having said that, allow me to make a quick shout out to our viewers in Facebook Live. A pleasant morning to our Facebook Live viewers, and thank you for joining us this morning. Moving on, let us put ourselves in the holy presence of our Lord Jesus Christ. Loving Heavenly Father, today we thank you for giving us the opportunity to come together on this day. May you bless the speakers for the knowledge that they will share. May you bless the participants to use this knowledge to the fulfillment of their goals. May you bless all the people behind this activity so that they may continue creating procurement initiatives with a spirit of joy and utmost passion. We seek for your guidance as we seek this in the name of Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. Once again, a pleasant morning to everyone and welcome to the online trainings exclusively for civil society organizations on Republic Act 9184 and its 2016 revised implementing rules and regulation, brought to you by the Government Procurement Policy Board Technical Support Office. I am Marky Duetes of the Capacity Development Division, and I will be your host for today's virtual activity. Just a quick recap for yesterday's learning session. We officially opened the program with our Executive Director, Attorney Rowena Candice M. Ruiz, as she welcomed all of us in the two-day online training event, especially for civil society organizations nationwide. Then afterwards, we jump right through our first session where we have a meaningful and productive lecture with Attorney Zenaida Bautista Biteng on the discussion of Government Procurement 101. At this point, before we dive to the program proper, let me give you an overview of the program of activities for the second and final day of our online training on government procurement. For today's activity, I am excited because we will be tackling Observer's Guide on Government Procurement for our Session 2 and Ethics on Government Procurement for our Session 3. Further, to make our discussion even more exciting, I would like to remind the participants that we shall be conducting series of knowledge check questions in this online training, wherein our Zoom participants shall answer questions through poll which shall be flashed later in your screens. We have a jam-packed session ahead of us, so please make sure to bring your A game starting now until the end of our activity. And we look forward for everyone to learn a lot from this online training program. All right, let us now move to our first lecture for today's and our second session for this online training. With that, allow me to introduce our research speaker. Our research speaker joined the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas in 2003 and handled various key positions in 5 different departments in the BSP since then. He is currently the director of the Organization Development Department and has been designated as head of the Bids and Awards Committee Technical Working Group for Goods and Consulting Services for more than 5 years. He has been exposed to procurement operations in the DSP and previously worked as head of the technical services staff of the procurement office and later on as head of back secretariat in the BSP. He obtained public sector certificates level 2 and 3 from the United Nations Development Program Chartered Institute for Supply Management in 2012 and 2014 in Rome, Italy, and New York, USA, respectively. He holds a bachelor's degree in public administration from University of the Philippines and his law degree from San Beda College. Without further ado, please welcome our first research speaker, a GPPB recognized trainer, Attorney Peter Paul A. Soliva.
Hello, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Can you confirm you can hear me?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Okay. Thank you, Marky, for that introduction. All right. So, welcome, my colleagues from the civil society organization. So, this is your day two, no? So, magandang umaga. Napakalamig na umaga dito ngayon sa Manila. I'm gonna take off my mask pala. Okay. So, for this session, we'll be discussing the Observer's Guide on the Government Procurement. And hopefully, I'll help you walk through ano po ba ang nasa provisions ng ating IRR about our observers. So at this point, I'll be sharing my screen. Here we go. All right. Please let me know if you're seeing my screen already. There. Nakikita na po ba?
Yes, attorney, we can see your screen. Thank you po.
All right. So for this morning, we'll talk about Observer's Guide on Government Procurement. So in particular, we will discuss what are the qualifications, responsibilities, and rights of the observers. And ano ba yung objects of observation? And we'll talk about the observer's report, no? Ano ba yung significance of an observer's report in government procurement? The fourth topic would be what should be the code of conduct of our observers. And finally, the tools and instruments of observers in the government procurement in the Philippines. All right. So this learning module was developed by the GPPB, Technical Support Office. And just a reminder, any form of reproduction and distribution without the author's approval is prohibited. So this is from the GPPB TSO. All right. So moving on, start with the qualifications, responsibilities, and rights of observers. If you look at the revised IRR, there's a portion, particularly section 13. So it talks about observers, no? And the first qualification of observer is that the observer should be a member of an organization duly registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission or the Cooperative Development Authority. That's the first one. Dapat member, no? Member ng isang organization. Second, the observer should have knowledge, experience, or expertise in procurement or in the subject matter of the contract to be bid. Next, the observer should have no actual or potential conflict of interest in the contract to be bid. And finally, the observer should possess other relevant criteria that may be determined by the Bids and Awards Committee of the procuring entity concerned. So let me siguro fill in certain details, no? Ano ba yung nakalagay doon sa section 13? So the reason behind having observers in government procurement is to enhance the transparency of the process. As you will note, this is one of the principles in government procurement in the Philippines. And when you look at Section 13, mayroon tayong tatlong klaseng observers na pabanggitin. I limanizing the provision. The first one who would be coming from the COA. So there is a COA representative. So in addition to the COA representative, the Section 13 provides that there are two other observers. Okay, there are at least two. The first one would come from a recognized private group or in a sector or discipline relevant to the procurement at hand. So on your screen, the provision says nagbabago, no? It would depend on the type of procurement. So when we talk about the goods, no, uh, the observer the provision suggests that the observer would come from the relevant chamber member of the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So if the procurement at hand is an infrastructure project, then the observer should belong to a national association of constructors recognized by the Construction Industry Authority of the Philippines. So examples of these are the Philippine Constructors Association or the National Constructors Association of the Philippines. Now, if the procurement that we're talking about to be observed is a type of consulting services, then the observer should come from a professional organization accredited or recognized by the Professional Regulation Commission or the Supreme Court. Examples of these provided by the IRR are as follows. So we have the Philippine Institute of Civil Engineers. We can also have Philippine Institute of Certified Public Accountants, or from the Confederation of Filipino Consulting Organizations. So let me go back, no? So we have COA as one of the observers, may COA representative. Then one would come from a duly recognized private group. So ito po yung on the screen. And the third observer shall come from a non-government organization. So I would presume marami sa inyo would come from NGOs. So these are the types of observers being described under Section 13 of the IRR. Okay. Next slide would show what would be the responsibilities of the observers. The first, very important, the observer should familiarize himself or herself or have sufficient knowledge of RA 9184 and its IRR. So it's fundamental that syempre mag-o-observe tayo. We would like to take note, no? We should also understand. Kaya meron tayong Procurement 101. You should understand the processes, the requirements of the law with respect to government procurement. The next one would be, of course, that's why we have observer to observe the stages of the procurement process. And after that, the observer is actually expected to prepare a report. Under Section 13.4 of the IRR, the observer should prepare a report either jointly, meaning there's a single report for all observers, or separately, pwede naman kanya-kanya, indicating their observations made on the procurement activities conducted by the BAC for submission to the head of the procuring entity, copy furnished the BAC chairman. So again, pwede pong yung observers, pwede magsama-sama, they will come up with a single report or they can submit individual report. This is for submission to the HOPE and the copy furnished the BAC chairman. Also, they need also to submit a report to the procuring entity and furnish a copy to the GPPB and the Office of the Ombudsman or the Resident Ombudsman. Nauna pala yung aking pagbanggit. So the observer should submit a report to the procuring entity CC, GPPB, and the Office of the Ombudsman. And the next, this is also understandable. They also need to disclose and eventually inherit if there is the observer possess a case of conflict of interest in the procurement. So dapat kasi we always ensure the integrity of our procurement processes. So these are the responsibilities of observers. Again, dapat yung observer merong baon, no? sufficient knowledge of RA 9184, then mag-observe siya in all stages of procurement process. The observer will prepare a report and submit this report to the procuring entity, the HOPE, CC the back chair, and also the GPPB and the ombudsman. And also, the observer needs to disclose if there's conflict of interest and eventually inhibit. No? What will happen is another observer will have to be invited in that particular procurement project. All right, so we're done with responsibilities. We'll move on to the rights of observers. Okay. So the observers, they can attend any or all stages of procurement process. Makikita dun sa section 13, there's an enumeration. So ang sinasabi, to enhance the transparency of the process, the BAC shall, during, ito po yun, eligibility checking, shortlisting, pre-bid conference, preliminary examination of bids, bid evaluation, and post-qualification, invite these observers. So the observers, if invited, yun po, hopefully they attend. And then once they are there, they have to record their observations during the procurement proceedings. And one of their rights is to have access to procurement related documents upon request. And after they have executed an NDA, in the provision, it's called a confidentiality agreement, but it's also known as non-disclosure agreement. So they have, the observers have access to the APP, the Annual Procurement Plan, the PPMP, the Project Procurement Management Plan, pati po yung minutes of the back meetings, abstract of bids, and open proposals. So they can access, Again, subject to execution of the NDA. And libre po dapat to. This is free of charge. That's why they need to execute a confidentiality agreement. So bakit nga ba kailangan may confidentiality agreement? Because it presupposes a legal contract between the government procuring entity and the volunteer or the observer, so that yung mga confidential material, knowledge, or information that the government procurement entity wishes to share should only be used for that particular purpose, and restricted po yung sharing to other parties, especially if there's no other legitimate purpose. That's why they can access, they can be given documents only upon execution of the NDA. All right, let's move to the objects of observation. Okay, so maybe perhaps you already discussed this yesterday on your first day of session. You had an overview of the procurement stages. So we have, the observer can observe the posting and advertisement, the distribution and sale of bidding documents, pre-bid conference, bid submission, opening of bids, bid evaluation, post-qualification, award of contract, yes, and possibly contract implementation. This can also be observed. Let's go on doon sa illustration ng procurement stages. So this is just like a quick review. So the observer can choose to observe ano ba yung yung mga stages dun sa posting, advertisement. Was it advertised? They can observe what happens to the pre-bid conference. And in the middle, you'll see this is the time that the submission of bids and the opening of bids. So these are the preliminary examination bids. So hindi po during opening lang ang requirement for observation. But we usually see observers participating most of the time in bid submission. But the provisions of the IRR would indicate that pwede na mag-observe during pre-bid conference or bid evaluation or even post-qualification. So the observers can do that. Hindi naman po rin mandatory that they need to attend all before they can make a report. But the recommendation is that so that they would understand the entire process, the observers should at least make a report with respect to all the processes or stages for observation. So these the processes for goods and services. The next slide would show, well, similarly, the standard procedures for the infrastructure project. So nandiyan din po yung advertisement, private conference, the submission of bids, the opening, bid evaluation and rank, and then post-qualification. So there. So the procuring entity is actually mandated to invite observers, no, before at least 5 days before each of the procurement stage or phase. So on the screen. All right. Okay. So yun yung process ng pag-observe at anong stage dapat nag-observe yung tinatawag nating observer. Now we go now to the significance of an observer's report. Okay. The government procurement kasi espouses transparency, no, and integrity in the procurement process. That's why observers, especially participation from NGOs in the private sector, would be very, very crucial in maintaining and adherence to these principles. So, in preparing and filing an observer's report, these are the points, no, the factors why there's an observer's report. The first would be the report will be a form of feedback to the procuring entity. So aside from serving as documentation of the conduct, no, of the procurement process, ano ba yung napapansin nyo, you may note certain irregularities that can form part of the report. The filing of the observer's report also is a means for the government agencies to improve their processes with records to gaps and deficiencies observed. So, ang observer's report ay hindi lang po ilalagay nyo, ito yung mga irregularities. That the observer's report, based on the recommendation ng IRR, should also contain ano ba yung areas for improvement, no, doon sa particular government agency. So reports and feedbacks from observers, whether positive or negative, would give procuring entities an opportunity to address the identified challenges and, of course, enhance ng kanilang processes. So that's the first significance why we have observer's report. Secondly, the observer's report ensures integrity in the process, because the observer's report can be a means or can result in the filing of corresponding administrative or criminal complaint, no, against the back members, the back secretariat or the TWG, or anyone involved in the procurement. If of course, there appears to be a violation of any provisions of the RA 9184, the Anti-Corrupt Practices Act, or the RA 6713, or the Code of Conduct and Ethical Standards for Public Officials and Employees. So yung report po can be used, no, as the basis for filing either administrative or criminal complaint. So, well, the purpose being as well para syempre pagka may observer, dapat talagang bantay, no? While supposedly, ideally, we wanted all government procurement personnel to adhere to the laws and to the principles in government procurement kahit na walang bantay, but this serves as a check, no? So those who do not deserve to be in government procurement are weeded out in the process. Kaya po kanina nabanggit natin, the report based on the IRR will be submitted also to the Office of the Ombudsman, no? So they can consider based on that report to file administrative or criminal complaint or be a lead to an investigation if there are of certain irregularities found in the process. Okay, so again, it's both a means to improve the processes in the procuring entity and also serves as a means to ensure integrity in the process. Okay. The third would be policy changes and improvements. So this is similar to the first significance of the observer's report. The first would refer to the procuring entity, and the third would refer to policy changes in improvements in general. Because as we have mentioned earlier, the copy of observer's report is likewise given to the Government Procurement Policy Board. So it can also serve as an effective tool for procurement policy, change, enhancement, and development. Since the GPPB, they continuously review the procedures, the policies in government procurement, especially when applied. So maaring yung observer's report would be a good source of information on how we could further improve or uh, make the regulations more attuned doon sa application. So that's one significance of the observer's report. Okay. Um, but as you will note, no, it's good that we have the seminar involving CSOs. Based on the records po ng GPPB, there are really challenges in filing observer's report. In fact, as early as 2006, the ombudsman created a department order internally which institutionalized a feedback and complaints mechanism designed to specifically address procurement-related cases. But notwithstanding such mechanism, yung reports that have been made available were actually hindi na effectively utilized. Because such feedback mechanism, sabi nila, due to the apparent comfort to provide only verbal feedback to agencies. Okay, so the Bureau of Resident Ombudsman has since been the keeper of the procurement reports filed by observers or CSOs. Pero ang konti lang, no? While the exact figures on the number of reports are not available, so based sa information gathered by the GPPB, for example, in 2008, only 2 reports have been submitted by the Ombudsman, and the reports are not even substantial. And sa GPPB naman, a very small number of observers' reports are being received every year. For instance, in 2010, there are only 4 reports, 8 in 2011, and 1 to date. So there is really a gap, no? While the law and the IRR provides a mechanism, yung figures glaringly shows that if you really want to achieve transparency, accountability, and efficiency in government procurement, dapat na-apply, no? The gathering of information and the filing of observer's report is one area that the CSOs or NGOs must develop and improve. I think this initiative to conduct a lecture about this would be a step forward, no? And we also understand that, of course, the preparation and submission reports may be tedious and cumbersome. This continuous training and capacity building would help address these weaknesses. Ayun, so yeah, well, another challenge faced by observers in filing observer reports is the power and authority given to them by law. it has been cited that the ability to disclose or hide irregularities immediately bestows observers with significant responsibility, and this potentially opens up new avenues for corruptions or threats. So, na-recognize naman po yun, no? Of course, uh, nandyan si observer, mag-report, at may kaakibat, no? There's a recognition there, may akibat na um, potential, no? Potential avenues and for corruption, and also clearly the threat. And that's why for corruption naman, that's why we have now the observer's execution of a conflict of interest form. So dapat wala talagang interest yung observer doon sa government procurement. So yun po. So this the observer's report is very significant, but we still have to improve on this to follow sana the essence of the transparency in government procurement process. Ayan. Next would be the code of conduct of observers. Okay. First, if you are an observer, you have to also respect the rule of law. So at all times, the observers must respect the laws and authority of the agencies charged with administering the procurement process. So, kumbaga, ano lang po, observers must likewise maintain a respectful and cordial attitude toward government officials and and those doing the procurement. Next, similarly, observers should conduct themselves with a high degree of professionalism at all times. So they have to undergo training. They have to know the law and to acquire certain degree of procurement expertise and knowledge. So they must uphold their ethical and moral obligations as procurement observers. The observers must also be competent, no? They need to exercise utmost efficiency and effectiveness in the performance of their duties and responsibilities. Uh, so, for example, when an observer is participating, no, in a certain procurement activity, let's say private conference, uh, the observer is free to ask questions. Pwede siya magtanong sa mga back. But of course, it would only make sense yung question if the observer also knows the process. So the observer must be competent, again, kanina nabanggit natin, in the procurement in procurement, or at least a subject matter of the procurement. Next would be dedication. The observers must show the highest degree of commitment and dedication in the performance of duties. They should uphold the guiding principles in procurement, particularly accountability, transparency, and efficiency. And also encourage other observers to do as well. Next would be honesty, integrity. Ito po yung kailangan natin talaga, no, in the government and also in procurement. So observers should conduct themselves with utmost integrity. They must have the trust and confidence of the back, and so they should help maintain, enhance public confidence in the integrity of the procurement process. Mas maganda po yun na very active din yung participation ng mga civil society in the private sector and government procurement, so that yung public confidence umaangat, no, especially when it comes to procurement projects. Kasi nandiyan ang observers, so nababantayan natin lahat. Okay, diligence. So they should exercise proper diligence and attention in the performance of their duties. Next would be accountability. Of course, observers should be answerable or responsible to the public as well as and to the organization that they represent for their actions and decisions. So ano po yan, magkakadikit. So they are accountable in submitting the report, kung ano ba yung contents ng report. Dapat these are professionally done and may basis. Okay, For meetings naman, of course, this is true in all cases, not also in government procurement. We should be punctual, especially that yung ating procurement activities are time sensitive. There's a schedule, there's a deadline. Observers are expected to be punctual in their attendance, and they must also fulfill their reportorial obligations. Under the revised IRR kasi, um, if if hindi nakapag-submit yung observer ng report, uh, then ang presumption, if no report is submitted by the observer within seven calendar days after each procurement activity, then the presumption is that the bidding activity conducted by the BAC followed the correct procedure. Okay. So impartiality, yung judgment ng observer must be based on the highest standards. So walang kinakampihan na supplier. It should be also independent. No, they must ensure their neutrality at all times and objective in appreciating the facts. And one of the code of conduct would be they must maintain proper personal behavior at all times, exercise sound judgment, and nakalagay na rin dyan ay sana proper attire and decorum, no, while performing their duties. So these are the code of conduct that must be observed by observers. So makita na natin na more or less they are overlapping and complementary to each other. In other words, observers also have responsibility, and also they contribute doon sa image ng government procurement, the image that should be transparent, accountable, and efficient. So observers would help that aspect. Okay. So ano naman po ang prohibited acts? Ayan, it's fundamental that we said a while ago that the observer should not possess a conflict of interest or even a potential conflict of interest. Because ang observer kaya po nandyan to ensure integrity and impartiality and objectivity of the procurement process. So it would be the opposite effect pag siya mismo ay may conflict of interest. And of course, kahit naman saan, kickbacks and gratuities. So bawal na bawal po. The observers are prohibited to solicit or assist in securing a contract for a commission, brokerage, or contingency fee or promise of such payments, even non-monetary benefits or the promise of such benefits. So they are prohibited to solicit and accept favors, gratuities from even meals and rides from contractors and potential contractors or parties to sub-agreements. So taking bribes, again, is not only strictly prohibited, but it is actually evil in itself, and the observers must always be firm in refusing bribes and steadfast in not accepting them. So yun po, sila po kasi ang nandun para to ensure integrity, so they must be themselves, do not provide a chance or opportunity to have itong mga kickbacks and gratuities. Okay. The third prohibited act would be discussing detailed information. So kanina, so we'll just correlate this with our discussion kanina. The observers must execute an NDA or a non-disclosure agreement or a confidentiality agreement when they access related documents from the government, from the procuring entity. So they are prohibited to formally or informally discuss with the bidders any detailed information related to the procurement, especially once the bids are open until the issuance of the award. So the observers shall not allow themselves to be used to circumvent the law. So ganun po. That's why discussing detailed information is one of the prohibited acts. Right. We go now to ito po yung do's and don'ts, no? Parang tips para sa mga observers. Okay. So we said a while ago that the procuring entity is mandated to send invitation, so to invite observers. So again, we have an observer from COA, at least one from a private sector, and at least one from an NGO. So well, these are the recommendations on those. Of course, we have to acknowledge receipt of an invitation. That's a matter of courtesy. Again, what are the do's pa? Know your role and rights. So this session will provide you at least a glimpse on what are your obligations and at what are your rights of observers. So bring references. So you come to the meeting prepared so that you will be able to participate actively. Okay. Next would be if there's a seemingly conflict of interest, even uh, kakalaman nyo lang that there is a potential conflict of interest, you need to disclose that. Okay. In during the proceedings, pagka may nakita kayong certain action of the back or decision that would appear to be not in consonance with the procurement procedure or the procurement law, wag naman pong masyado tayong abrasive. So, ang recommendation is we politely call the attention of the back. So yes po, no? The observer can talk, no? Can participate in the meeting. And ang suggestion, politely call the attention of the back. So the observers are also, ito yung maganda, be assertive and persuasive at the same time, but not too abrasive. So meaning by assertive, when you call attention to the back for a certain procurement procedure, uh, you you cite, mas maganda you cite a basis. So if you know the law, you say, ito, based on this section, the back should have done this, and more likely if you are cordial, then the back will take note and act accordingly based on sa pag-invite po ng attention nyo with the back. Okay, next would be, of course, we have to strictly observe and comply with the confidentiality agreement. So we don't disclose. There's a form, no? There's a form in the revised IR. Nasa appendix po yan na there's an example na ano yung nilalaman ng confidentiality agreement. But basically, you cannot disclose it except for the purpose that you are given access to. Binigyan kayo ng access to observe, but walang other purpose dapat, no? Especially kung may conflict of interest. Okay. What are the other do's? We prepare reports and we inhibit in case of a possible conflict of interest. So conversely, ano yung dapat hindi gawin ng observers? Of course, number one, no? Don't come unprepared. Baka you do not know what you're talking about. It will be disrespectful naman doon sa mga attendees that they prepared, they studied about procurement law, even the subject matter, so they can actively participate. So again, don't come unprepared. Secondly, yung kanina na sinasabi natin, be cordial. The observers, wag naman po yung mag-debate, no? Mag-debate sa back, especially because this also involves other people, no? The discussion should be respectful and cordial. And expressing one's opinion is actually also not recommended. It's a don't, because our recommendation or our observation should always have a legal anchor, or at least there is an authoritative source why we said that. So it's not matter of opinion, but there should be always a basis for pointing out, no, a certain observation during the proceeding. Again, so we don't be combative. We should not be complacent, and don't engage in fishing expedition. You know that time is precious, no, especially in back proceedings. So itong mga ganitong practices would only prolong the process and make it the process inefficient, no, pagka tanong lang ng tanong but you don't know what we're talking about. And then, of course, don't accept favors or gifts, and you refuse to accept monetary consideration. So these are the don'ts, no, in observing a procurement process. Oh, all right. Next, ano ba yung tools and instruments of observers? Number one, of course, ayan. You should have a copy of the Bible of the government procurement. So, lagi ang basehan po natin would be the Republic Act number 9184 and its implementing rules and regulations. Dapat mas maganda bit-bit nyo po yan, no? Especially when you're participating. And next, the checklist of basic documents. Use a checklist now as observer. It will serve as a guide to make sure that the observer does not miss anything. Para guided din sa observer, especially during bid opening, diba, we have checklist of requirements. Pati sa observer, nasusundan niya yung presence or absence of important documents. And this would help you prepare eventually the observer's report. So it would help if you bring with you the checklist of basic documents. Okay, the next would be ano ba yung tools and instrument na binabanggit dito? The third one would be the conflict of interest form. So on your screen, there's a sample, no, of conflict of interest form. So there are actually 3 basic questions of the conflict of interest form. Number 1, do you have any relationship with the HOPE back member, secretariat, TWG, head of the project management office, or end user unit or project consultants within the 3rd degree of consanguinity or affinity? So yung po, that question would actually lead whether you have conflict of interest in terms of relationships, no? 3rd degree of consanguinity or affinity. Number 2, do you have any significant financial or business interests that would reasonably appear to be affected by the activities that you would be undertaking as an observer? Ayan, so i-disclose po natin yan. Kunyari, yung one of the suppliers, kayo may share kayo, or you'll be contracted later on by the specific contractor that is participating. So we have to disclose that. And the 3rd question would be any nature of any conflict of interest that you may have in relation to the activities that we would be undertaking as an observer. So this is a check, no? This is a check whether the observer has a conflict of interest with respect to the procurement activity to be observed. Okay. So once kasi na merong nakitang conflict of interest, that observer should be prohibited from participating, for understandable reasons. And the CSO and NGO invited shall send another observer naman with no conflict of interest. Ayan po. Okay po. Sali lang po kasi meron pong announcement sa BSP every 9 AM. Wait lang. Next would be procurement observers report. Yan. So the observer must fill out the procurement observers report, and this would contain a determination ng compliance by the procuring entity, no, with the procurement processes. Okay, and the procurement observers report or the POR should also contain, no, ano ba yung mga specific recommendations para to evaluate, to enhance the effectiveness of the procurement practices. Okay, so observers in cooperation with other agency may assist in validating the results of this self-assessment tool. Ayan, pasensya na po, tapos na ang announcement about COVID sa Bangko Sentral. Yeah. The next would be the APCPI, or the Agency Procurement Compliance and Performance Indicators. So ito po yung tool to assess the government agency's performance in the procurement activities and in compliance with the national procurement systems and international best procurement practices. So ito po yung APCPI. There's a separate session on that, no? So each government agency supposedly meron siyang mga APCPI, so may mga indicators, and then there's let's say scoring, no? Scoring how good, how well the procuring entity is complying or performing in a specific indicator in terms of transparency, ganyan. So meron po mga APCPI. So I think you can also have access to this, and this can be made available, no, through the GPPB. So these are the tools and instruments for the observer. So ano po yun, APCPI kasi ginagamit din yan para ma-check, no, ano ba yung mga areas that needs to be improved in a specific procuring entity. So I think that in a nutshell would be what observers are all about, no? Their purpose, their obligations, their rights, and how they contribute to the government procurement processes. Yun. So I think that's it. So this would be the time for questions. Marky?
Oh, sir. Before that, attorney, so at this point, we will be having our first knowledge check for this
Okay.
session. So to all Zoom participants, kindly lock in your answer to the following questions that will be flashed in your screens. Okay, so for our first question, in order to become an observer, one must have expert knowledge on RA number 9184 and its IRR. So please lock in your answers. So we already have 45 out of 74 participants. Okay, I think we have the majority. Okay, the correct answer is true.
Ayan. So Marky, we have 91%, no? 91% of the participants got the correct answer. So let me explain a bit, no? While it is ideal that an observer must be an expert, no, must have expert knowledge on RA 9184 and its IRR, the provisions indicate that the observer must have sufficient expertise. So they must be familiar with the RA 9184 and its IRR. Ayan. All right.
Okay, for our next question, Okay. Can we have our next question, please? Okay. For our next question, the following are the reasons why an observer's report is significant, except A. Ensures integrity. B. Provides feedback to the procuring entity. C. Guides the back in making procurement-related decisions. And D. Input to the policy changes and improvement. Again, the following are the reasons why an observer's report is significant, except A. Ensures integrity. B. Provides feedback to the procuring entity. C. Guides the back in making procurement-related decisions. And D. Inputs to policy changes and improvement. Okay, and the correct answer is letter C. Guides the back in making procurement-related decisions.
Okay, Marky. So 72% got the correct answer. Actually, the question is a bit tricky, no? Si TSO, pinapahirapan ng ating mga participants. But based on the slides, the significance of observer's report is to ensure integrity, provides feedback to the procuring entity para ma-improve, and inputs to policy changes and improvements because of this report is being submitted to the GPPB as well. Pwede, sa akin nga, pwede rin sana yung C, but it would be the last. No? Pero kasi si BAC will have to make that decision. Siya yung accountable that. So for this question, letter C is the exception. Thank you, Marky.
For our third and last, I guess, last question, please flash it now on our screen. Okay, for our third question, the following are the reasons why an observer, oh, sorry. That was the second question pa pala. Okay, I'm excited. So for our third question, observers may discuss detailed information with bidders after the bid opening. Is it true or false? Again, observers may discuss detailed information with bidders after the bid opening. True or false? The correct answer is false.
Okay, so on the screen, so 95% of the participants got the correct answer. Okay, so yung observers have access to information, but ang corresponding obligation niya, gamitin niya lang to para to prepare the report, to make recommendations, but not to discuss detail with bidders kasi hindi niya po role. It's not the purpose of why observers are there. In fact, dapat hindi po gagawin kasi baka ma-impair ang objectivity at integrity of the procurement process. Ayun, Marty.
Okay, so thank you to our participants or to our Zoom bayanan for participating in our poll. So if you have still questions to the topic presented by Attorney Suliba, please do drop them at the Zoom chat box. Of course, our viewers in Facebook Live may also drop their questions using the comment section. But accordingly to the to a study according to a study instituting workplace, stretching and warm up promotes health, safety, and team culture. So before we proceed to our open forum, I believe that all of us should also needs to do the same thing to regenerate our energy, have an active participation, and a good presence of mind. So with that, we prepared a nice breaker that can be done even you're on your seats. So all you have to do is to groove and move by following the video that will be flashed on your screen. So feel it, enjoy it, and so now let's do it.
All right. This was nice and fun. We had fun putting it together. I have Nishin here with me. Let's go. Tap.
Shoes on, get up in the morning, cup of milk, let's rock and roll.
Clap, clap. Open.
Kink out, get the drum rolling on like a rolling stone.
Good.
Sing song when I'm walking home, jump up to the top of the brown.
All right, we're gonna keep the hands the same. We're gonna change the feet. Take it out. 4. Good, good. Open. All right, we're gonna have us change here. Rock. Good. Up, then down. Rock. Up, down. Shine. Good, nice and smooth. Rock it out. And up. We're gonna start from the top.
Bring a friend, join the crowd. Whoever wanna come along. Word up, top, just move every up the wall.
Good.
Sky's the limit, so against the breakdown.
Once again, we're gonna change that leg motion to open and close. Open.
Heavy, can you hear the bass boom? I'm ready.
Good, nice and strong. All right, we're gonna rock it out. Take it up, and down. Rock. Good, shine. Rock it out. Up. We're gonna have a change here, roll it over. Good, roll. Shine. Rock it out. Good, here we go. Stomp it. Stomp that foot. Keep it going. All right, we're gonna have that gentle sway from the top. Good. Nice and easy. We're gonna let it shine up and over. 4. Back to the hook. Rock it out. And up and down. Good. Shine it out. Rock it out. Roll it over. Good. 2 more. Shine. Rock it out. Woo!
Oh my, you're all awesome, guys. Okay. Okay, let's resume. So at this point, we will be having the open forum. For our first question, attorney, here is it. Is attendance of observer mandatory in a government bidding? And likewise, is it also applicable to a non-government organization company?
Okay, thank you, Marky. So my answer would always be based on a legal provision, no? So we look at section 13. So it's carefully worded, no? What is mandatory is the invitation to be made by the procuring entities. Invitation po, no? Ang mandatory. But the attendance of observer, especially in a procurement stage or procurement activity, is not mandatory. So again, what is mandatory is the procuring entity will invite. Okay, so that's clear. Dun sa second part of the question, is it also applicable to non-government organization company? Again, because the government procurement applies only to government entities, we don't have any basis to say that it is also applicable. Yeah.
Okay, sir, that is noted. For our second question, how about if the observers wants to attend but was not invited to attend the bidding procedures?
Okay. This is a very interesting, and I agree with the question, no. This is dapat ma-discuss natin to. Again, when we look at the legal provisions, the mandatory is invitation, no, by the procuring entity. So it would seem that basta nagpadala ng invitation si procuring entity kay COA, kay private sector, at kay NGO, that would satisfy already the requirements of the law. And sila, ang procuring entity kasi maglalagay, di ba? Sino imbitahan. So this is something that we need to improve on, no? But by practice, if you want, no, to really attend, maybe you can, the observer can write a letter to the back saying that I want to participate as an observer. I'm a member of a private sector group, no, and or an NGO, and I'll be attending a particular bidding activity. I think wala namang problema doon, no? Mas maganda nga 'yon. Pero in general, open kasi, transparent dapat ang ating mga bidding procedures, open to the public. So it's best that kung hindi na imbitahan, we can write a letter and inform beforehand yung back involved that you will be attending as an observer or as anyone interested to witness the, let's say, the bidding procedures. So yun po. Pero wala kasing nasusulat na iba, no? Ang nasusulat lang base sa IRR is that the procuring entity will make such invitation. Thank you.
Okay. Our next question is, for their advantage, some LGUs has its own CSO to act as their only recognized observer in back. Thus, integrity of the bidding process becomes questionable and prearranged. Paano natin maiiwasan ito? Can observers be blacklisted by the LGU?
This is also an interesting question, no? Let me address yung observers be blacklisted by the LGU. Currently, GPPBTSOs here, then they can also confirm there is no guidelines in blacklisting of observers. So what we have are contractors and suppliers. It's a loaded question, but because ang sinasabi dapat iba naman, no? Ibang CSO naman ang mag-witness, because the CSO is parang somewhat connected with the LGU. and yung questions arise on the integrity of the process, baka naman kasi for purposes of compliance with Section 13 kaya ini-invite, pero sila pa rin yun. So the question is loaded. This siguro we have to discuss this with the GPPB, but we cannot kasi make conclusions, no? Especially if it's not supported by facts and evidence. So ngayon, for as long as the procuring entity invites an NGO, private sector, then they comply. They comply with the provision on the observers under the IRR. Pwede naman i-report siguro, pwedeng i-report, but again, we need to back up itong loaded question alleging pre-arranged. So yun po, yung po muna ang masasagot natin. Mahirap kasi mag-conclude kaagad. Yan. Thank you.
Okay. So next question, allowed po ba ang observer na lumapit sa tables kung nagkakaroon ng problema or discussions ang back at feeders na hindi namin marinig?
Yeah, very practical yung question, no? During the pre-pandemic, it happens in our agency sa BSP. It would depend, no? It would depend on the back. Kasi the back has to maintain order in the proceedings, no? In certain instances, the back can allow, no? The back can allow na lumapit. Of course, with proper request, sabihin ng observer, Mr. Chair, can I approach the table and look at the documents, ganyan. So, pwede naman gawin yun. You can make that request as an observer. Pero may mga ibang instances kasi na nagkakagulo na. So the back should maintain order in the proceedings. So I think pwede basta mag-request at payagan ng back. Pagka maraming participants, what we do is dapat naka-share, no? Naka-share, naka-share screen, naka-projector ang anumang document na pinag-uusapan. So that would enhance the transparency. So again, there is no hard and fast rule. The back has the authority to maintain kasi order in the proceedings, but my suggestion is that the observer should make a proper request. At I suppose pagbibigyan naman ng back yan pagka valid yung request.
Okay. For our next question, can observers take pictures or video of the actual bidding proceedings?
Ayan. Part of the discussion namin dito sa back and in other government entities is that access to these documents should be made public, no? But the back can regulate, or the procuring entity can regulate. So what does it mean? Just to have orderly proceedings in at the first instance, no, pinag-uusapan na yan, no, the back can say don't take pictures or video because right now meron din tayong privacy notice. Kailangan alam ng mga tao if their pictures being taken or videos are being taken, no, in the actual proceeding. So the back has the right to say no for the protection, for the interest of orderly proceedings and for the privacy. Instead, there are alternative means naman. Bakit mo kailangan mag-take ng pictures? Bakit mo kailangan mag-video? What you can do is to get access to documents, get copies of documents, and then write it down. So, yeah, the back can regulate po taking pictures and video at the same time. Kasi may mga ramifications po yan in actual meetings.
Next question, please. So, what if the person sent by the observer entity or NGO has no sufficient knowledge on RA 9184? Will this invalidate the person's role as observer?
Good question. my quick answer would be hindi naman siguro ma-invalidate. Especially that it's hard to measure sufficiency of knowledge. Yung prescription kasi ng rules, member, it's easier to validate. Member ka ba ng professional organization or an organization under SEC and CDE? Madali yan. Yung sufficiency of knowledge is prescribed. Pag pumunta, syempre dapat alam yung 9184, the basics. Pero who can tell you that this person is not sufficient? It's hard to tell, no? But that's for me. That by alone cannot invalidate the role as observer. Yun yung sagot natin dyan. Pero ang prescription, dapat pag pumunta, medyo alam niyo naman ang ibig sabihin ng Government Procurement Reform Act. So that's the recommendation of the law. Pero well, it's hard to validate, and based on personal opinion, it will not automatically invalidate the person's role as observer.
Okay, so next question. Is a single letter of invitation sent to observers containing the dates, time, and venue of the stages of procurement sufficient to comply with the requirement on invitation of observers?
The quick answer is yes, provided that the requirements of the IRR have been satisfied at least 5 calendar days before the procurement activity. Wala po kasing express requirement that a letter of invitation will be sent for each procurement stage. Now, but if there's a change, there's a change in date or venue, then the observers should be notified or properly informed about the change.
Next question, sir. Is there an observation report template to be used?
I'll have to redirect the question to GPP-BTSO. But as far as I know, parang wala. I'm baka makatulong ang GPPB dyan kung merong template.
Okay, so we'll take note on that. Okay, so next question. Does the GPPB give certification to CSO so that the said CSO can be invited to attend procurement proceedings?
No, the GPB does not give certification. And also GPB TSO can confirm that.
So, sir, this is the last question for our open forum. So, we know for a fact that observers are considered as volunteers. No honorarium is given or allowed. Where do we charge our travel expenses, such as meals or transportation, in attending the bidding process?
Okay. This is a good question as well. Just a quick background, kami mga resource persons from different government agencies, we also have topics being discussed long time ago. So kasama po ito, napansin din namin, bakit nga ba hindi nabibigyan ng honorarium or certain emoluments yung mga observers para naman umattend sila. But way back in 2005, si GPP-BTSO, and in 2007, nag-issue na sila ng non-policy matter about this, that on the question kung pwede bang bigyan ng honorarium yung observer. And the answer of GPPB ay hindi, for 2 reasons. Number 1, the reason for the observer being there to participate in the government procurement, independence. Now, kung bibigyan ng procuring entity ng certain honoraria or equivalent yung observer, then that might impair yung independence principle. So that was the reason you can look it up, no, doon mayroong NPM opinion about that 2005 and 2007. And the second reason would be yung pagbibigay ng honoraria, merong budget circular si DBM na in-issue, and dun sa enumeration, this would include BAC, TWG, Secretariat, and so on. And from the enumeration, hindi kasama ang observers. So there is no legal basis to give honorarium. But having said that, no, valid naman po yung question na where do we charge our travel expenses in attending the bidding process. So ngayon, wala. You cannot charge that with the procuring entity based on the 2 points already mentioned. Pero sana makahanap ng pamaraan just to encourage. But for now, no honorarium pa rin talaga. Ayan.
Okay, and that concludes the open forum. So with that, we would like to thank our research speaker, Attorney Peter Paul Soliva, for leading a very informative and comprehensive discussion on the Observer's Guide on Government Procurement. Thank you so much, Attorney, for graciously accepting our invitation to be part of this online training.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Marky.
At this point, we will take another 5-minute health break. So if you want to grab some snacks or drinks or go to comfort room, you may do so now. Thank you and stay with us.
Do you know that procurement is crucial in achieving our society's collective vision of a strongly rooted, comfortable, and secure life in the Philippines? Hello everyone, I'm Billy Bayong. Let me show you how our Procurement Policy Board innovates, adapts, and responds to our changing needs to enhance the procurement system and help the government work for us. An efficient, transparent, and competitive procurement system connects every Filipino to vital services from the government. This can help move more people out of poverty, gain access to better education, receive quality healthcare, and enjoy economic opportunities. These yield greater trust in government institutions and bring the country closer to achieving its national development goals. The Government Procurement Policy Board focuses on simplifying various processes to produce more successful procurement that contributes to the effectiveness and efficiency of the government. The board employs strategies to identify needs and implement projects. It refines and calibrates procurement policies, adjusting to emerging trends based on needs of procuring entities. It creates ways to capacitate practitioners to better manage their procurement processes, monitor effectiveness of our procurement systems, and it adapts to the times, especially during national emergencies. The GPPB has strengthened the procurement process at the earliest stage, the planning phase. The board has issued bidding rules responsive to new laws and policies set by the government. GPPB has also streamlined the bidding process through the use of technology. GPPB has introduced guidelines to ensure timely procurement, especially during a national emergency. GPPB Technical Support Office pioneered initiatives to better assist procuring entities. Simple and competitive, transparent and accountable, monitored by the people. These make for an effective procurement system, responsive to the needs of the people. The GPPB, adapting, Responding, innovating for nation building. To know more about procurement, visit gppb.gov.ph. To know more about procurement, visit gppb.gov.ph.
There will be no white flag above my door. I'm in love and always will be. I know I left too much mess and destruction to come back again. And I caused nothing but trouble. I understand if you can't talk to me again. And if you live by the rules of it's over, then I'm sure that that makes sense. I will go down with this shit. Now I'll put my hands up and surrender. There will be no white flag above my door. I'm in love and always will be. Now worry me, which I'm sure we will. All that was there will be there still. I'll let it pass and hold my tongue, and you will think that I've moved on. I will go down with this shit. Now I'll put my hands up and surrender. There will be no white flag above my door. I'm in love and always will be. I'm in love. I will go down with this shit. Now I'll put my hands up and surrender. There will be no white flag above my door. I'm in love and always will be.
Ships go by and wave at me. I try, can't breathe. There's an ocean in between your heart and me. I know I hurt you and I don't deserve you, but don't leave me, leave me. Took you for granted, but don't leave me stranded here. I need you, need you. It's a long way down if I fall without you. I know I hurt you and I don't deserve you. I don't back the ocean tide. If that's what I had to do, let me spend my whole damn life making it up to you. Yeah, I know I hurt you and I don't deserve you, but don't leave me, leave me. Took you for granted, but don't leave me stranded here. I need you, need you. It's a long way down if I fall without you. I know I hurt you and I don't deserve you, but don't leave me now.
All the leaves are brown. All the leaves are brown. And the sky is gray. I've been for a walk on a winter's day. Yeah. I'd be safe and warm if I wasn't in LA. California dreaming on such a winter's day. Stopped into a church I passed along the way. While I got down on my knees and I pretend to pray. You know the preacher likes it cold. He
All right, let's resume. So, moving on to the program, let us now dive to the session number 3 for today's activity. So, with that, allow me to introduce our research speaker for this session. Our research speaker has an extensive experience in government projects as a legal, procurement, administrative, and financial advisor or consultant to various government institutions and agencies. He took his bachelor's degree in political science, earned 12 units in Master of Arts in Government Administration, and graduated in Bachelor of Laws, all in Far Eastern University. He also earned his postgraduate course on practical project management in global market with focus on government infrastructure projects in Asian Institute of Management and JICA Joint Program in 2011. On top of that, he also earned his Master of Laws in Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Maynila, Graduate School of Law in 2008. A professor in various law schools handling political law and business law subjects, and a former reviewer of a licensure examination for teachers, criminology board exam, accountancy board, and bar examination. Joining us today is our second research speaker, a GPPB recognized trainer, Attorney Lawrence P. Villanueva.
A pleasant morning to everyone, and thank you, Sir Maki, for the kind words of introduction. I understand the TSO would be guiding me or assisting me in pressing the slides, the presentation. All right. Now, the topic assigned is ethical consideration in government procurement. Originally, this topic is being discussed in the GPPB-TSO as the threefold accountabilities of public officers. Now, the outline of the presentation are as follows. Now, the discussion would be divided into two parts. Now, the first part would be general principles and consideration. Now, in this particular, no, not yet, ma'am. Not yet, please. In the first topic, we will be discussing concepts of ethical standards and accountability. The purpose of this first part is to deepen the understanding on the concept of ethics and accountability of public officers and employees involved in public procurement. Now, number 2 would be offenses and penalties under RA 9184. You know that there are provisions in RA 9184 that imposes the penalty both as to, when you talk of penalties under RA 9184, you have administrative penalties for suspension and blacklisting of bidders also, and also the members of the BAC, TWG, Secretariat, end users, and even the HOPE and the finance cluster. Also, we will be discussing portions of RA 3019 or the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, and we will try also to include allied laws because it's also discussed in the slides later on. There are provisions of RA 3019, Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, and also provisions of or portions of Republic Act 6713 or the Code of Conduct and Ethical Standards for Public Officers and Employees. So the topic is divided into 2. Let us now begin. Next slide, please. For general principles and consideration, take note, why is it important for civil society organization to attend this particular lecture on ethics in public procurement? Remember, brothers and sisters in the government at the civil society sa private sectors, kayo po sa batas under RA 9184 ay binigyan ng kapangyarihan almost similar to the Commission on Audit. Yan ang civil society organization. Kaya po nagkaroon ng civil society and NGO and private sector participation, the purpose of which is to reinforce yung COA insofar as kasi ang COA is post-audit normally eh. Dati nag-pre-audit, ngayon post-audit uli. Now, and in reality, not all Commission on Audit auditors invited as observers would attend. Some of them would claim na, sorry, post-audit kami. But in other agencies, active participation ang mga auditors. So, iba-iba. In reality also, different auditors would have different interpretations of procedures and guidelines. I no disrespect, but nakikita natin yan, but little by little, COA is now trying to standardize their method of audit. So, ang civil society organization, kayo po yun ngayon, mahalaga na ma-inculcate din po ninyo yung malalim na pag-unawa sa ethical standards when it comes to public procurement. Why? Number 1 is itong perang ginagamit, ginugugol ng bawat gobyerno kung saan kayo nag-o-observe, hindi ho yan pera ng mga BAC, hindi yan pera ng mga secretary, undersecretary o ng mga HOPE. Pera po yan at galing yan sa kaban ng bayan. These are taxpayers' money. So ang ginawa ng batas, sinali ang civil society organization bilang tagamasid, tagabantay sa tamang paggugol ng pondo ng bayan. So that is why, because sa procurement, alam natin pera ang pinag-uusapan, procurement is susceptible to corruption. No doubt about it. Given na po yan, talagang very prone, may tukso pagdating sa procurement. And also, yung corruption and ethical behavior of procurement agents, kapag ka hindi ho yan na-suppress sa tulong ng civil society organization, kapag ka hindi nabantayan ang paggamit ng pondo ng bayan, ang end result normally niyan, nag-i-erode yung pagtitiwala ng mamamayan sa gobyerno. At mauuwi yan sa hindi magandang pamamahala. So, ang civil society organization, salamat sa inyong participation at ito pong module na ito ay designed for you to know your duties and responsibilities and for you to properly share to the members of the BAC, TWG, Secretariat, HOPE, and even the bidders yung tamang code of conduct and ethical standards. So next slide please. Yan. In this slide, pinapakita po yung pagtatagpo ng affirmative duty to pursue yung public interest. Ano ba talaga ang objective ng gobyerno kaya may procurement? Ang procurement supposed to be acquisition of goods, infrastructure, and civil works. The acquisition, ang purpose is acquisition on time, in full, and without error. Dahil kung ang procurement pa delay-delay, aanhin mo pa ang damo kung patay na ang kabayo. It should be in full. May infrastructure dyan, bitin, hindi natatapos. And there should be no error. Di ba yung may, well, it's being cured. Na bumili ng rail, sabi ng balita, hindi naman kasya doon sa release. So it should be procurement on time, in full, and without error. That is the public interest. Umaasa ang bayan. Pero dito sa kabilang banda, sa right side portion, may obligasyon, okay, to refrain from conduct that uses public office for private benefit or partisan advantages. So itong ating module ngayon, maganda ito dahil merong kasabihan. Integrity without knowledge is weak and useless. And knowledge without integrity is dangerous and dreadful. Sabi yan ni Samuel Johnson. So yan po yung pinapakita ng slide na yan ngayon. Kailangan magsama ang integrity at knowledge. Again, integrity without knowledge is weak and useless. And knowledge without integrity is dangerous and dreadful. Yan po yung gustong i-relay ng slide na yan from our GPPB TSO. Next slide, please. Yan. And so, integrity is basically putting ethics into practice. A person who adheres to ethical standards is considered a person of integrity. All right. And integrity is defined as the adherence to prescribed values, principles, and norms in the daily operation of public sector organization. So talagang alam mo, marami tayong batas. Merong Republic Act 6713, ang tawag diyan Code of Conduct and Ethical Standards for Public Officers and Employees. Ang dito sa Code of Conduct for and Ethical Standards, binigyan diyan yung 8 norms of conduct na sana ako, lahat ng nasa gobyerno, including yung civil society organization, yakapin din natin yung mga norms of conduct under this law. Okay? Number 1 dyan is yung commitment to public service. Number 2 is professionalism. 3 is justness and sincerity. And then meron diyang political neutrality. These are the factors that would affect the outcome of procurement. Meron pa niyang responsiveness to the public. Nationalism and patriotism is also a norm of conduct na sinasabi at inuutos ng batas na dapat naroon ang pag-perform ng function nakatuon. And meron yan number 7 yan is yung commitment to democracy and simple living. So these are the guide norms of conduct. Next slide, please. Very early. Knowledge check. I think GPPB would be propounding a question. Yes, sir, Maki.
Yes, sir. So this is our first knowledge check for our second lecture. So all Zoom participants, kindly lock in your answer for this first question. Okay. The question is, integrity is defined as the adherence to prescribed values, principles, and norms in daily operations of public sector operations. Is it true or false? Again, integrity is defined as the adherence to prescribed values, principles, and norms in the daily operations of public sector organization. True or false? Okay. And the correct answer is true. Back to you, Attorney Villanueva.
All right, so 98% of our participants got the correct answer. But sa puso ko, hindi lang yung pagsagot ng true or false. It should be part of our role really as a civil society organization as well as for the members of the back. Tandaan ninyo, para kayong COA, the civil society organization, watchdog yan ang tawag ng Supreme Court sa inyo. Kayo po ang watchdog of government procurement. Kaya kayo na ilagay dyan ay siguraduhing tama. Sapagkat kung hindi tama, ano ang susunod? Next slide please. Yan na. Alam po ninyo itong sabi kanina ni attorney, napakaganda ng lecture niya, kailangan for you to become an observers, you must have sufficient or even dapat expert kayo in in matters involving public procurement. Itong RA 9184, ito yung unang batas na may parusang kulong. First procurement law that imposes the penalty of imprisonment. Mamaya i-discuss natin yan. At alam nyo ngayon sa Office of the Ombudsman, 80% halos ng mga kaso pending preliminary investigation doon sa Office of the Ombudsman involves violation of RA 9184 in relation to Republic Act 3019. So, ang tawag nga namin dyan sa mga abogado and very few lawyers, even justices doon sa Sandigan Bayan, hindi magkasundo kung ang RA 9184 ba ay predicate crime. Take note of this. This is for legal purposes to enrich yung ating legal system, whether RA 9184 can be treated as a predicate crime to RA 3019. So pero iba at malalim na diskusyon yun. So dito, tandaan nyo, hindi lang po RA 9184, hindi lang Republic Act 3019. Pag binasa mo nga yan ng sincero, alright, in RA 9184, ang penalty dyan, if you would violate Section 65, 5 lang naman. There are only 5 criminal offenses enumerated under Section 65 with a penalty of imprisonment. 5 po yan. Ang penalty is 6 years and 1 day to 15 years imprisonment maximum. Dito namang RA Republic Act 3019, 6 years and 1 month. So 1 day and 1 month nagbari dito sa dalawang batas na ito. And so part of our role now is to discuss these offenses and penalties. After naming mailatag yung concept ng Code of Conduct and Ethical Standards, next slide please. Remember again to emphasize yung standard of ethics, yung panuntunan na hinihingi when it comes to public procurement. Okay, when it comes to public procurement, you could see ang nakalagay dyan, it should be the highest standard of ethics. Alam nyo, sa insurance, meron niyang regular, ordinary diligence, diligence of a good father of the family, and extraordinary diligence. Yung talagang ingat na ingat ka dahil pag hindi ikaw mananagot. Pagdating sa procurement, ito rin po. The standard of ethics required to be observed by procuring entities, by the bidders, manufacturers, suppliers, or distributor during the procurement and execution of contract is always the highest standard of ethics. Ang nakalulungkot lang, pagkatapos ng procurement, yung observers hindi na nakakasali doon sa contract implementation. Ang pinakahuli nila is the post-qualification. But you are still entitled to ask for documents pertaining to the procurement. Now, that is for the government side. Now, kaya ito sa batas, dahil highest standard of ethics, bidders determined to have committed corrupt, fraudulent, collusive, coercive practices by the government will not be eligible to bid in its project. Ibig sabihin, pag nalaman ng gobyerno na may collusion kang nagawa, collusive action, or corrupt, coercive, or fraudulent, ano ba itong mga ito? Ma'am, let's discuss. Next slide, please. I think it's there. Yan. So ang sabi ng slide kanina, mabablacklist ka kung bidder ka. Hindi ka pwedeng sumali. So ang unang tinitignan ng observers, sapat may knowledge kayo. Another tip, observers, i-access nyo rin po yung GPPB site on those blacklisted bidders. Bago kayo pumunta, halimbawa, Civil Works, titignan nyo muna yung mga pangalan ng sumali o kaya during the pre-bid conference, naka-attend kayo, open nyo rin yung laptop ninyo. Or you may even ask for records purposes. Request the chairman, although hindi naman kayo nagpe-pre-qualify, to check if these bidders are also blacklisted. Because if blacklisted, the rule is that they shall be disqualified to join the bidding process. Role yan ng civil society. Titignan nyo po. At pag nakita nyo yung blacklisted, you have to report it to the members, to the chairman of the BAC, so that the members would also know. Ano ba yung collusive, corrupt, coercive, fraudulent practices? Halos pare-pareho lang naman yan. Yung collusion kasi, nakalagay dyan sa slide, it's a scheme or arrangement between two or more bidders to establish bid prices or artificial levels. Ang essence ng collusion, para to make it parang layman's, ang collusion simply means a secret agreement for some wrong purpose. Pag may collusion, normally lihim na pagpaplano yan. Dalawang bidder. O sige, magbibid ako beyond the ABC. O disqualified na yon. Saan ka naman nakakita? Nasa invitation to bid na any bids beyond or higher than the ABC should be automatically disqualified. And eto na ngayon yung bidder. Nagbibid ng above the ABC. Alam namang disqualified na yan. So yan yung mga collusive practices among. So merong secret agreement for some wrongful purposes. Ano ba yung corrupt? Magkaiba yung collusive sa corrupt. Yung corrupt, Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act. Yung corrupt simply means rotten or bulok. Ito yung mga practices na napakasama, improper and unlawful, designed to enrich oneself and others. Yun yung corrupt. Kaya may Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act. And then meron ding parusa doon sa mga coercive practices. Yung coercive practices kapag pinwersa or kinumpel. Iba yung napuwersa, iba yung pinwersa. So yung coercive practices is harming or threatening to harm directly or indirectly. Sa experience po namin, modesty aside, since 2004, nariyan na kami sa RA 1994, and halos malibot na namin ang Pilipinas sa training. And also, yung big departments of the government, nagkakaroon kung magkaminsan ng coercive practices. All right? But dapat ang observers minamanmanan, pinagmamasdan kung merong coercive practices. All right? Okay, minsan for purposes of promotion, nagiging condition yung award of a contract. So dapat ang civil society, nariyan kayo para hadlangan itong mga ganitong mga pangyayari. And number 4 is yung fraudulent practices. Yung fraudulent practices is fraud. Yung fraud is pandaraya talaga. Misrepresentation of facts in order to influence the procurement process. Yung fraud, pandaraya, or cheating. Yan yung mga falsification ng document, misrepresentation, palalabasin na may single largest completed contract, wala naman pala. Ang nangyayari niyan, madaling makita yan, civil society, yung mga misrepresentation and falsification. Okay? In fact, you're entitled naman to secure copies of this document subject to confidentiality, sabi ni attorney kanina. Now, makikita mo minsan yung BAC, nagkaroon ng failure of bidding. All of the sudden, magre-rebid. Yung requirement na hindi naman makaya ng isang bidder, makikita mo, biglang papantayan, ibababa yung standard. Procurement, for example, ng hospital. So ang kailangan ng experience niyan, may hospital background din. Pag nag-rebid na, any structure na lang. Basta ang amount would be 50% of the ABC. Something is wrong with that. But anyway, I'm not referring to DOH, hindi yan DOH. Nangyayari yon. So ito po yung mga babantayan ng civil society. Collusive practices, corrupt practices, coercive, and fraudulent, yung mga cheating and pandaraya sa procurement. Actually, meron kaming pitfalls of government procurement. Doon sa MCLE, dinidiscuss namin yan for lawyers. Pitfalls of government procurement. Ano yung mga dangers? Dinidiscuss namin yon. Sana civil society could also attend it. All right, next slide please. By the way, itong RA 9184 na sabi ko may kulong, ang bidding kasi pwedeng manual or electronic. So walang distinction po yun. Kay electronic submission of bid or pag dumating yung oras na online na siya or manually ang bidding process, all covered po yan ng penalties ng RA 9184 Section 65. Next slide please. Alright. Itong isa pa dyan sa pinagbabawal, dito sa RA 9184, makita ninyo, sasabi kanina, all coverage of penal clause manually or electronically. Itong controlling interest, sabi natin kanina, pag blacklisted na ang isang company, okay, yung other companies also na shareholder pa rin itong incorporator or stockholder, nabablacklist po rin siya. So mamaya I will explain itong paragraph na ito. I will have to double check paragraph 2E of Appendix 17. I will have to double check this particular slide. So next slide po muna tayo. Doon muna tayo sa enumeration. Ano ba yung may mga parusang kulong? Ito yung divulging valuable information of a confidential matter. Talagang bawal yan sa Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act. Meron diyang Section 3, Paragraph K. Back Secretariat normally ang nagko-commit niyan. The general rule is that the Back Secretariat, even the TWG, shall not disclose the content of the bidding docs until may advertise mo siya or until may post mo sa PhilJeps or sa website. Now, sa website. Merong iba niyan na ipamimigay na yung bidding docs, wala pa yung actual invitation to bid. That is a criminal offense under Section 3, Paragraph K of RA 3019. So Secretariat. Okay? In fact, sa Section 65, pwede pa rin mag-poll yan. At yung opening or prior to. Kasi divulging, mag-overlap. Sorry ha. This slide pertains to Section 3, Paragraph K of 3019. Medyo nagsapsuyang slide. Anyway, bawal magpaalam sa ibang bidder ng laman ng bidding docs and any other confidential information until ma-disclose na yan. And during the pre-bid conference, kinaklarify yan. Bidders, if you have questions, write us request for clarification, and in writing, the BAC shall answer them. Alright, so observers, bantayan po ninyo ito. Baka yung mga sumasali sa bidding, nakita nyo nagkakaroon ng undue advantage. You may include that in your report. Alright, so let's continue. Next slide, please. Ito namang slide na ito, it's about Section 3 rin, pero paragraph E. Giving any party any unwarranted benefit, advantage of preference. Alam po ninyo, sa Sandigan Bayan, halos nariyan yung mga kaso namin. Karaniwan sa kaso ng procurement, halos naman procurement na sa Sandigan Bayan, almost 80% to 90% involving public procurement yan. Ang normaling nagkakaroon ng kaso sa Sandigan Bayan under violation of 3019 Section 3, ang nasa screen Section 3 yan Section 3 Paragraph E, F, and G. Yung E yung causing undue injury to any party including the government. Yun ang Section 3E. Okay? Causing undue injury to any party including the government and giving any private giving any private party any unwarranted benefit, any unwanted preference or advantage in the discharge of their function. So, yan po nagpo-fall yan. So, tignan nyo rin yung back. Nakita nyo dun sa slide. Merong under the table dyan. Bawal po yon. Okay? Sabi nga nila ang corruption sa ibang bansa under the table. Sa Pilipinas, ang corruption including the table. Well, Senator, yung narinigan ko nagsalita yan, but hindi naman sa lahat ng agencies of the government. So, bawal ho na magbigay ng unwarranted benefit. Paano ba nangyayari ang unwarranted benefit? Halimbawa, binigyan mo ng award ang isang bidder. Alam na alam mo namang yung kanyang single largest completed contract fake and falsified. Merong kaso sa ito, common na lang actual, although pending appeal siya, inaward mo yung kontrata, alam mo namang kamag-anak ng asawa mo, tiyuhin yung pinag-awardan. Mabuti kung hindi sana alam, pero the law does not make distinction. Alam nyo, sabi nga ni attorney, per second, third degree. Ang pagbilang niyan degrees na yan, para guided din kayo, paano ba binibilang yung first degree, second degree, third degree? Nakalagay sa atin up to third degree. Ang tandaan ninyo, pag ang degree of relationship, by affinity yan or by consanguinity, the law does not distinguish. Yung mag-asawa, ilang degrees ang mag-asawa. Yung ikaw at yung asawa mo always counted as one yan. The two shall become one. So ang pagbilang ng first degree, yung magulang. Second degree, yung grandparents. Pag third degree, yung uncles and aunties. Fourth degree, yung first cousin. Kaya sa batas, yung fourth degree, hindi pwedeng ikasali yung first cousin. Yan yung pataas. Pababa naman, pag binilang mo ang consanguinity, ikaw, yung asawa mo, walang degree yon. The two shall become one. Yung children, yung anak, hindi pwede sumali sa bidding yung anak mo because first degree ang children. Grandchildren, apo, di second degree yan. Apo sa tuhod, yan. Third degree. Ganyan po ang pagbilang yan. Now, by affinity naman, meaning dahil na pangasawa mo, yung parents-in-law mo, first degree yon. Diba? Yung brothers and sisters-in-law, second degree yon. Yan, ganyan po ang pagbilang yan. By affinity kasi asawa mo, naging isa kayo pinag-isa. Yung pagbilang sa consanguinity na yung magulang mo, first degree, lolo mo, second degree, yung tiyahin at tiyuhin, third degree, pinsan buo, fourth degree. Ganon din yung pagpatungin mo lang at pagsamahin yung kamag-anak ng asawa mo, mga in-laws, yun din po ang bilang niyan. All right. So, let us continue. Next slide, please. Yung undue influence naman, as shown on screen, ito po yung when a person takes improper advantage of his power over the will of another, depriving the latter of reasonable freedom of choice. So yung undue influence, ako ang hope dito. Nag-recommend na yung back for award. Binalik for no reason. I will not act on this. Hindi nyo dapat ibigay to dito ang award. You have to award this to. Ganyan, specific. Yun ang may parusa. Hindi lang yung ayaw pirmahan, doon yun sa section 41 kasi may reservation clause dyan eh. Power yan ng hope. Pero ang controlling dito is yung back, diniktahan na, you find ways para may award yan dito. Kayo ngayong civil society, titignan niyo. Teka muna, bakit na i-award yan sa panlima? Hindi naman na post-qualify yung number 3, number 4. 1-2 pa lang yun na post-disqualify. Bakit na-award agad sa panlima? Civil society observers, kayo po yung kailangang mag-submit ng report. Sabi nga ni attorney kaninang umaga, under section 13, paragraph 4 of RA 3019, if there is no observer's report, it shall establish a legal presumption that the VAC followed the prescribed procedure. So pagka wala kayong observer's report, nagkakaroon ng presumption na itong VAC, tama ang kanilang ginawa. So dapat talaga, tama o mali, gagawa ng report ang civil society organization as observers. Now, kung ang difficulty ay paggawa ng report, kami po, well, you may request siguro, meron kami mga template sa paggawa ng report. Para yung similar sa post-qua evaluation summary report. May mga design po kami na template for that eh. Maybe we can share it. Pag nahihirapan kayo minsan kasi English-Englishin pa yan, meron na kami, chine-check na lang. Nakalagay na yon. Unang titingnan, may funded ba itong project? O kung early procurement, okay lang. Yes, no lang. Number 2, was there a pre-procurement conference? Mag-check ka lang doon sa nire-report nila eh. And susunod, was this project posted in PhilJeps? Lalagay mo yung date, name of secretariat, kung sino yung nag-post. Na-invite ba kayo as observers? Now, ilalagay nyo rin yun. Kailan napadala yung invitation? So, okay yun. So, yun. Nagkaroon ba ng pre-bid conference? O, kailan ba yung pre-bid conference? Was it conducted 7 days after the posting? Yung mga yun, chine-check na lang po yun. Yes, no na lang. Or during the pre-bid conference, nabigyan ba yung chance yung mga bidders to propound question? O meron bang quorum? O, ngayon ang quorum po kasi hybrid na. Pwedeng combination of personal, yung physical presence, or through video conferencing. Titignan nyo rin yun as observers. Tama ba yung mga proseso? O, kung may issue, nagbotohan ba, kailangan merong majority vote. Kung 5 sila, at least 3. Dapat yung 3 ay nag-agree. Mga ganun po. Itong topic na ito is for observers talaga na ano ba yung mga role namin pagdating sa bidding. Titignan nyo yun. O, teka muna. Bakit bumoboto agad si chairman? Wala pa namang tie. The chairman shall only vote in case of a tie. So yung mga yon, alam mo sa totoo lang, the observer should be over and above sa knowledge ng back. Di ba? In the kingdom of blinds, yung one-eyed is the king eh. Kailangan mas higitan nyo pa yung, how can you observe kung hindi kayo expert? So kailangan, dahil sacred ang pagbibigay sa inyo ng kapangyarihan na para kayong COA, you should know by heart, read, understand, and memorize by heart RA 9184 and the allied laws. And each and every stage, you should know the proper requirement. Okay? Now, undue influence. So, bawal po yan. Next slide, please. Yan, dun sa anti-graph pa rin, section 3019, section 3A, yan, bawal din po yung persuading, inducing, influencing another public officer to perform an act constituting a violation of rules, regulations, okay? Or allowing himself to be persuaded, induced, or influenced to commit such violations. So, alam nyo, pag ganyan, kahit alam nyo, sa Sandigan Bayan, ang mga kaso namin dyan, hindi lang naman naiiwan sa RA 9184 eh. Hindi lang 3019. Ang totoo, a single act ng back, halimbawa, single act ng back, inalaw mo yung isang bidder, dineclare nyong post-qualified, entitled for the award. When in fact, ang kanilang bidding docs defective. Pero sabi ni chairman, paragraph A, itong section 3A, paragraph A, performing an act constituting violation of the rules. O, pinersuade mo yung TWG, ipasan nyo na yan. Yung TWG naman, number 2, allowing themselves to be persuaded. Pumayag sila. That is what you call conspiracy. Kaya pagdating mo sa anti-graft and corruption, sa Sandigan Bayan, ang kaso niyan, the act of one is the act of all. Sabit yung back, sabit yung TWG, kasi yung back ang gumawa ng resolution, pinirmahan nila, and nag-recommend ang TWG. Recommendation na lowest calculated and responsive based on the dictate of the members of the back. Conspiracy yan. Collusion yan, connivance and conspiracy. The act of one is the act of all. Kaya minsan isang kaso, meron kami dyan, one project, common ito, very popular, consisting of 21 informations. So 21 ang kasong nakasampa dun sa Sandigan Bayan. Isang project lang yon. Why? Meron ng kaso ng direct bribery, merong kaso ng malversation, may kaso pa ng falsification of public document, meron pang violation of RA 3019, yung Section 3, Paragraph E, giving nga of any unwarranted benefit. So ganun po ang pagtingin diyan. Napakahirap nitong RA 9184. Hindi siya talaga simple. Why? Because ang involved ay public funds. Pera ng taong bayan yan eh. Kailangan maingat ang paggamit. Next slide please. Ayan, ito yung pinaka-common, Section 3, Paragraph E. Pagpunta mo ng Sandigan Bayan, and I would recommend this, observers, civil society organizations, if you have time, kung meron time naman kayo, although ngayon ay community quarantine tayo, tuloy pa rin naman ang hearing ng Sandigan Bayan. If you have time, kaya lang ayoko namang i-recommend, baka mahawa pa kayo ng COVID-19, pwedeng mag-observe sa court. Makita ninyo, you could see by observing sa court, ano ba yung mga kaso ng RA 9184. That's how you would sharpen your tools nyo as observers. Makita ninyo sa court, paano yung mga personalities nakikita nyo sa TV, pagdating doon napakababait. Yung pala may kaso ng anti-graft. Alright, let's continue. Next slide please. Next slide is knowledge check. Therefore, Sir Marky, take it away.
Yes, sir. So, okay, Zoom participants, here are second knowledge check. For our second question, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, the question is, it is defined as the improper and unlawful enrichment of oneself or others. A, collusive practices. B, corrupt practices. C, coercive practices. D, fraudulent practices. Again, it is defined as the improper and unlawful enrichment of oneself or others. A, collusive practices. B, corrupt practices. C, coercive practices. D, fraudulent practices. The correct answer, letter B, corrupt practices.
Correct. The answer there is letter B. Although that's 77% of the participants. I'm happy nakuha ng 77, but in reality nag-overlap po 'yan. Okay? Pagdating sa kasuhan, although may collusive, corrupt, coercive, pag nagka-demandahan na yan, ang demanda, titignan ka kung Section 3E, Section 3, hindi na collusion, corrupt, coercive, but specific crime na. Halimbawa, improper or unlawful enrichment of oneself. Minsan yan, ginagawa na yan sa Revised Penal Code, violation of Section, article, kasi Revised Penal Code, Article 210, direct bribery yon. Okay, so hindi na yung corrupt practice, lalabas na yan pagka unjust enrichment ka, direct bribery kung humingi ka ng lagay. Kung ikaw yung humingi ng patong, humingi ka ng lagay, direct bribery yan. Meron ding indirect bribery. Binigyan ka for no reason at all, tinanggap mo naman for future for future transactions. So yung kanina 77% got it correct. I am happy. But in the real world, merong specific crime, may specific elements na po yan. So let us continue. Sir Marky, next slide please. Ayan. Offenses committed by private individuals. So actually, aside from this, nasa screen nyo po yan, pagka sabi ko kanina, nagkaroon ng collusive practices, yung merong sabuatan, merong connivance or conspiracy. Sa conspiracy, the act of one is the act of all. Kahit yung dalawang members ng, halimbawa, yung BAC, sila yung nag-recommend for award. Yung TWG, ni-recommend din nila for award, dineclare nilang lowest calculated and responsive. Dahil nagbigay ng pera itong bidder, lahat silang tatlo will be held liable and accountable under specific provisions of the law. Conspiracy yan. The act of one will become the act of all. So, right? So, ito naman nakalagay sa screen, Section 65B of RA 9184, yung offenses committed by private individuals. I understand, medyo siguro nag-jumble itong presentation natin. Dapat ang presentation niyan, ano ang RA 9184, enumeration of crimes? Ano ang RA 3019, enumeration of crimes? Ano ang 6713, required standard of ethics? Now, itong nasa screen po ay Section 65, ito naman ang RA 9184. Okay? Letter B na ito. Pero mas mahalaga yung mamaya yung A, yung 5 krimen. Anyway, ito mahalaga rin pala. Yung offenses committed by private individuals. Ito na yung bidders. Pag sinabing private individuals, either supplier, manufacturer, distributor, or even ito yung mga principals abroad na nagpapadala ng mga peking dokumento. Okay? So remember, although as a rule, company yan, pag company sila, ang magiging liable dyan are the, number one is yung the authorized representative na nameke at saka yung officers of the corporation. So ano yung pinagbabawal ng batas under Section 65, paragraph B? Agreement and submission to submit bids, prearranged lowest bid. Anyway, ito yung paggawa ng sabuatan na, sige, yung isa above the ABC, yung isa naman para mangyari yun, binigyan niya na yung isang bidder. Alam nyo, ang maraming ganyan sa infra na experience namin. Those who would buy the bidding docs, bibigyan ng 100,000 yan para hindi na sumali. Ano ba naman yung 100,000 kung millions naman later on yung increase ng bid price ng other bidder? Pag nakita mo, loan bidder na lang yan. O ano yan? Red flag po yan. Bakit naging loan siya? Ang bumili 5. So gumastos siya ng 400,000 each dun sa iba. Ang bid price niya naman, tender niya, mas sobra ng 20 or 30 million. Ang laki ng savings niya. Kaya pinagbabawal po yon. And number 2 is malicious submission of different bids through 2 or more persons. So actually, sa bidding, kapag ang dalawang company, pareho ang lawyer niyan, bawal po yan, conflict of interest yan. Dalawang company, isa lang yung kanilang authorized representative, bawal din po yan. Conflict of interest yan. And agreement to secure undue advantage. Ano yung agreement to secure undue advantage? Itong mga private individuals kasi, lalo sa procurement of equipment yan, o bidders, civil society, take note. During the private conference, observer kayo, tignan nyo na yung specs. Kung walang nagtatanong, kayo na po ang magtanong, Mr. Chair, for purposes of putting it on the record. O bidders, narito po kayo. Ito po bang specs? Hindi po ba ito tailor-fitted to a particular product? Yon ang observer. Nagtatanong kayo kasi para to set the records straight. Allowed po kayo to make that question. Okay? O end user, you can ask even the end user. Yung price po ba nito is reasonable in terms of the current prevailing market price? Yan. Minsan pa, observers, tignan ninyo ha, ang ginagawa minsan yan to secure undue advantage, binabundle. Pinagsasama-sama, yung supplier na meron siya, halimbawa, 3 product. gagawin siyang one lot. Paano mo naman gagawin yung one lot? Yung isa, supply delivery ng OR equipment. Yung isa naman is purchase ng medicine. Yung isang bidder, wala siyang record ng sale of medicine kasi equipment lang yung binibenta niya. Yung isa meron. Yan, nagkakaroon ng ganyan, yung pag-bundle-bundle. Tignan nyo, dear civil society organization observers, bakit naka-bundle? Ano ang purpose? Baka isang bidder lang ang makakaroon ng single largest completed contract na naka-bundle siya na ganon. So those are the things na tinitignan ng observers. Dapat malikot kayo mag-isip dyan. Then number 5 here, 4, employment of scheme. Disadvantageous to the public. Yun, minsan ang scheme niya marami. Delivery schedule or requirements sa section 6. Tignan niyo po yun, observers. 5 days from receipt of notice to proceed. Paano ka naman magdi-deliver within 5 days from receipt of notice to proceed? Hundreds of millions worth ang goods na yan. Meaning to say, meron ng stock, yung sasali dyan, may available stock sa inventory na yan. So, observers, titignan nyo yon. You have to validate why is it na napakaikli ng delivery requirement. Ang laki ng volume. So, yan ang role ng mga observers. Because dyan nangyayari itong nakalagay sa screen, employment of scheme, disadvantageous to the public. Ang mananalo niyan yung may available stock. Kaya tignan nyo rin yung pagka nag-observe kayo na mga medicine yung binibili, look at the expiry dates. Okay? Baka yung expiry hindi requirement, dapat nakalagay yung requirement. Ang manufacture date, hindi lumang gamot, dapat bago, at least 1 year prior to date of delivery. Tinitignan po yun ng mga observers kasi para kayong COA. Remember, you are given the same role as that of the COA in terms of the bidding process. Para kayong COA talaga dyan. Okay? Ino-audit ninyo yung conduct of procurement and you have to make sure that it is consistent with the requirements set forth in RA 9184. All right, let's continue. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Sir Marky, yan. Okay, so another offense. When 2 or more bidders agree to submit different bids as if they were bona fide. So maraming ganyan. Nag-a-agree siya. Minsan kasi bawal din yan nakalagay yung papagamit mo, yung pangalan mo. Sa infra ganyan. Gagamitin lang yung may track records pero nakasab ko na yun, babayaran lang ng royalty. Okay? Kaya dapat tinitignan din yung key personnel. Sisilipin din yan dapat ng observers. Okay? Or when 2 or more bidders enter into agreement that call upon one to refrain from the bidding. Ito yung pinaka-common na ito. Binabayaran yung isa para umatras. Okay? Bidder would maliciously submit different bids through 2 or more persons, corporations, or partnership. Yan talaga yung mga karaniwan. Okay? Sa infra po ito nangyayari. Okay? Kasi minsan sa goods, halimbawa, yung mga multinational corporation, talagang magkakalaban yan. Okay? Labanan niya ng galing ng equipment, labanan ng galing ng, lalo sa health, yung mga life-saving, highly sophisticated medical equipment, labanan yan. They would not compromise the goodwill of their company. Okay? And any act that would employ scheme which tend to restrain natural rivalry. Ayan na yung mga locked-in, yung mga tailor-fitted na specification, tapos magre-require ka na maraming impossible to comply na isa lang yung meron eh. Minsan maghahanap ka ng ISO, 3 ISO sa isang product. ISO issued by Europe, by Japan, and by the United States of America. Para lang, so bawal din yung ipiprescribe mo yung country of origin. Bawal po yun. Okay? To be able to evade that or to, not to circumvent, to ensure na ayaw mo ng specific country, you could require ISO from other countries na higher standard. Pwede yun. Okay? But as a rule, you cannot prevent a specific country of origin kasi violation ng United Nations. Remember, we're a member, Philippines is a member of the United Nations, so we have to follow yung requirement ng United Nations. Bawal po yung mag-limit ng country of origin. Next slide, please. Okay, ito. Section 65, paragraph C. Okay. Submission of eligibility requirements containing false information. Ito na yung mga falsified. Ang dami niyan. Fake yung kanyang, normally ang pinipeke po dyan is single largest completed contract. Yan lagi ang napipeke dyan. Kasi you cannot falsify mayor's permit. Binabalidate yan eh. Pag submit ka ng expired, pinalabas mong valid pa siya, disqualified ka. Bidders, observers, allowed na ngayon yung mayor's permit na expired provided meron silang official receipt of application for renewal. Pwede na yon. Okay? Observers, pwede na rin po ngayon yung hindi notaryadong omnibus sworn statement, yung hindi notaryadong bid securing declaration. Baka naman i-complain nyo, hindi notaryado. Pwede po yan under the prevailing rules kasi nga may COVID. Pero before payment, dapat mag-submit na yan ng notarized. Okay? Okay. Using name of another or allowing another to use its name. Ito na yung binibenta yung company para lang humingi ng royalty. Okay? And then yung withdrawal of bids. Itong withdrawal of bids, para siya maging punishable offense, kailangan may bad faith. Kung nagwi-withdraw ka because nakita mo yung principal mo nagsara because of COVID, valid yung pag-withdraw mo. Provided yung withdrawal, may rule dyan. Observers, tandaan nyo ha, ang withdrawal, ginagawa yan, withdrawal of bids, it should be done prior to the deadline for submission. Pagka nag-deadline for submission na, bawal na yung mag-withdraw ng bids, ang any bidder. Nagiging ground yan for administrative sanction, suspension, or blacklisting. Okay? Next slide, please. Ito, Section 65. Ito lang yung may kulong. Okay? Sa public officer. Tandaan nyo po yan, 5 lang. Section 65. Yan. Ano yung may kulong? Number 1, by opening any sealed bid, including bids not limited to bids that may have been submitted through electronic system. So, bawal yung premature opening of bids. Kaya, ang rule, pagka hindi sealed, nire-reject po yan. Okay? The BAC or the Secretariat shall not accept bids na hindi sealed at all. Pero yung improper sealing, in times, inaalaw po yun. Kaya makita niyo yung practice ng COMELEC maganda. Kung walang seal, yung Secretariat, as long as hindi pa deadline, tinuturo yung isang table. The Secretariat would point to the bidder. You look at that table, meron po silang packaging tape doon. No? Free naman. You can have it sealed by yourselves and then isubmit po ninyo. You still have time. That is a best practice. Allowed po yun. There's nothing wrong with that. Rather than, hindi ho kayo sealed. Wala ho itong tape. Hindi namin tatanggapin. Although you have the right to reject it, advice mo, ayun ho, meron doon, no? May time pa kayo. Rather than losing the opportunity of getting a good offer in favor of the government. So number 1, opening of any sealed bid. Okay? Premature opening. Number 2, delaying the procurement process without justifiable cause. Nangyari ito sa isang department, ha? USEC. Ang USEC, chairman. Yung vice chairman niya, ASEC, hindi rin na-attend. Dahil walang chairman, walang vice chairman, hindi makapag-transact ng business. Reset. Na-delay ang procurement. Anong sabi ngayon ng ombudsman? Suspended ka for 6 months, USEC, because you violated Section 65. Yung paragraph B ito delaying the procurement process without justifiable cause. Remember, baka you have the jury duty. Tandaan yan again, observers. Yung mga BAC, meron yung TWG. May jury duty yan. Meaning to say, they have to give utmost priority sa role nila as BAC over and above the other duties and responsibilities sa kanilang job description. That is the requirement of RA 9184. Okay? So, number 2 is delaying without justifiable cause. Kung meron namang COVID, merong asymptomatic, nag-positive, you have to give them chance to recuperate at gumaling muna. Number 3 na may kulong, Normally, nag-i-influence, gawa ito ng hope, influencing, unduly influencing, or exerting undue pressure on any member of the back or any officer employee, okay, of the procuring entity. I-induce mo sila unduly, influence mo to make a decision in favor of one particular bidder na paborito mo. Yan. May kulong po yan. Kulong yan. 6 years, 1 day to 15 years. Oh, hindi ganun kabilis yun. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So 1, 2, 3. 1, opening. Number 2, delaying. Number 3, unduly influencing. Number 4, next slide, please. Sir Maki. Ayan, medyo nawala lang. Pero ang next slide niyan, dapat dalawa pa. Okay? 5 po yung section 65. Number 1 is yung opening, any sealed. Opening any sealed bidding docs prior to the designated time. Number 2, delaying without justifiable cause, the procurement process. Number 3, influencing. Number 4 niyan, supposed to be is yung splitting of contracts. Yan po, para hindi maligaw muna. Before this slide, 2 ways of committing section 65.3. And nandito muna tayo. Okay? Dito po yan. Ang nakalagay dyan is yung, if you read section 65, splitting of contract which exceed yung procedural purchase limit to avoid competitive public bidding. Observers, dapat memorize nyo po ito. Okay? Yung splitting of contract para walang bidding is a criminal offense under section 65. In fact, yung splitting of contract, nakadefine yan sa section 54.1 of RA 9184 sa IRR. So please read the definition. Pagka hinati-hati na yung procurement para wala ng bidding. Bawa, threshold amount, 1 million. Para hindi na tayo umabot ng 1 million, hati-hatiin na natin. May nangyari yan, 2 million eh. 2 million yung ABC. Hinati niya yung 400 million, comfort room for male. Yung another 400 million, comfort room for female. Yung remaining budget na another 400, ginamit yung road network to connect the two. Yan. Yan. I'm not saying nakasalanan niya ng hope because there are other considerations kaya nangyari yon. Nakinig sa consultant eh. Alright? Nangyayari yon. So bawal sa batas at may kulong yung paghati-hati ng kontrata into smaller value, into smaller phases to prevent yung public bidding. So observers, as a rule, competitive public bidding po is the default mode. In case of doubt, dapat ang proseso ng pagbili is through OCM, OCB, Open Competitive Bidding, Competitive Public Bidding. Yan ang mga terminologies dyan. Okay? So next slide please. Sorry. Ang number 5 pala, yung last niyan, sorry, previous ma'am. Previous po, back muna. So again, yung section 65, 5 po ang may parusa dyan. 5 lang ang may kulong under RA 9184. Opening any sealed bid envelope prior to the designated time, delaying the procurement process without justifiable cause, and number 3, unduly influencing any members of the back, okay, in favor of a particular bidder. And number 4 is splitting of contracts, and number 5, yung pinakamahalaga, is the abuse of the hope of his power to reject the bid, declare a failure bidding, or not to award a contract under Section 41 of the law. Naroon po yun. Pagka may grave abuse yung head of the procuring entity na ayaw niya mag-award, nire-reject na yung bid or he refuse, okay, to award the contract, that is a criminal offense. Yan. Next slide po, please. Yan. Bumalik na naman tayo sa section 3. Ito naman ho is RA 3019. Kaya sabi ko kanina dapat compartmentalize yan eh. Para hindi nagja-jumble-jumble. Alright. Now, itong section 3, paragraph C, directly or indirectly requesting, receiving any gift or any government license or permit. Not necessarily na ito for bidding. Kasi yung directly or indirectly requesting, receiving gifts, Pagpunta po niyan sa in matters involving procurement, pagpunta niyan sa Sandigan Bayan, ang kaso diyan is Revised Penal Code Section 210. Okay, direct bribery yan kasi humingi eh. Ikaw yung humingi ng alam mo yung direct bribery, tatlong bagay po yan. Humingi ka ng pabor, humingi ka ng regalo, for example sa bidder, tatlo ang purpose niyan eh. Number one, sige, ito pinakasimple sa back secretariat. Humingi ng pera ang back secretariat from the bidder. Number one, para hindi siya pumasok at hindi siya magbenta ng bidding docs. Wala siyang ginawang krimen nun ha. Ang ginawa lang niya, hindi siya pumasok. But still, that is direct bribery kasi tumanggap siya ng regalo. At yun yung kapalit, hindi siya papasok. Number two, direct bribery pa rin. Itong same back secretariat, tumanggap ng pera para tanggapin yung bidder, yung bidocs beyond the deadline. Late na yan ng 5 minutes, tinanggap niya pa rin. Ito yung pinagkaiba ng una. Yung una, hindi lang siya pumasok, hindi makabili ng bidding docs. Itong pangalawa, ito na talaga may overt act. Meron na siyang ginagawa talaga. Ibig sabihin, alam niyan tapos na yung deadline, tinanggap pa niya. And that is still a crime under section article 210 of the revised penal code. At yung pangatlong klase ng direct bribery, yung pampalimot. Okay? Meron kang gagawin pero hindi mo i-apply ng tama yung batas. Pag compute mo alam mo nang yung kanyang net financial contracting capacity wala nga sa 100% Pero pinapalabas mo compliant. That is still bribery. Itong section 3, paragraph C, being shown on screen pertains to licenses or permit, not necessarily for the bidding process. So next slide po. Yan. Ito. Accepting or having any member of his family accept employment in a private enterprise within 1 year after termination. Ang bawal dito is within 1 year. Pero kung after 1 year, pwede na. Halimbawa, kasi ito hindi na ito ni observer. Parang chismis na ito pero pinagbabawal din ng revised penal code, yung public officer, ito pa yung mga BAC, TWG, and secretariat. Ang question dito, ito, observer ka, pwede ka bang yung anak mo ipasok mo sa company ng bidder? Ikaw observer. Pero nung magkita kayo, Mr. Company ABC, kayo po, pwede bang tanggapin nyo yung anak ko sa company ninyo? Well, that is conflict of interest, dear bidders. Huwag nyo pong gagawin yan. Mako-compromise yung integrity as observer. That indirectly, that would apply sa inyo. Bawal po yun. The moment you do that, you will be declared disqualified to become observer. Yan. Pero yung pagtanggap ng mga back ng employment after 1 year, after the retirement, minsan yung batas inaalaw naman po yan. Okay? Next slide, please. Okay. Ayan, neglecting to act within reasonable time to obtain benefit or advantage. Nakalagay dito, neglecting or refusing to act within a reasonable time on any matter. Alam nyo, meron naman ARTA na We have the ARTA, Anti-Red Tape Act Law. Alam nyo, sa ARTA, you have to really, in case of conflict between RA 9184 and ARTA, in matters of procurement, 9184 will prevail. Halimbawa, humingi yung bidder ng minutes of the meeting. Within 5 days from the request, bibigyan niya ng minutes of meeting ng pre-bid conference, minutes of bid opening. Inaalaw yon. And they have to pay the amount of production costs. Yan. Pwede po yon. Okay? So next slide po, please. Okay. Knowingly approving any license, permit, privilege, or benefit in favor of any person not qualified for or not legally entitled to such license. Ito ay about license ito. Kita niyo sa screen, hindi siya directly during the bidding process Okay? Sa bidding process dito, ang pinagbabawal is yung i-award mo. take note, the cardinal rule is any award given to a disqualified bidder is null and void. Yan, bawal po yan. Basta in-award sa disqualified, hindi siya lowest and responsive, disqualified na bidder na yan. Okay? Null and void kahit i-award pa yan. Okay? So, observers, pag may award not, alam nyo null, disqualified yan, gawa kayo na observers report. I-cite ninyo. According to the Supreme Court, any award given to a disqualified bidder shall be null and void. Copy furnish COA. Yan na. Para naman, kasi civil society organization, alam niyo sacred ang role ninyo. Dapat you have to internalize, bakit ako naging observer? Karapat dapat ba ako? Paano ako mag-observe kung hindi ko kabisado itong mga regulasyon tungkol sa procurement? So next slide, please. So you really have, again, I would repeat, memorize by heart. Ito naman yung about civil liability in case of conviction. Just to simplify, medyo kasi itong slide is patapos na tayo. Sa RA 9184, RA 3019, meron threefold accountabilities yan. Take note po mga observers. Yung simple act pwedeng mag-result sa administrative. Mapaparusahan yan yung mga BAC, TWG. Okay? Mapaparusahan yung mga BAC secretariat. Pag administratibo, ang parusa niyan ay suspension, maximum penalty, dismissal from service. Yan yung administrative. Meron ding civil. Civil liability. Ang civil liability, sa regular court po yan. Yung administrative, pwedeng sa ehensya kung saan sila, pwedeng sa ombudsman, pwedeng civil service. Pero yung civil liability, it's the court. Okay? Para matalo ka sa civil liability, kailangan mas malakas lang yung ebidensya ng kalaban mo. Mere preponderance of evidence. Para naman makasuhan ka for maging guilty ka administratively, kailangan merong substantial evidence. Yung evidensyang ginagamit siya sa iyo should be enough to convince a reasonable mind that in fact a crime or an offense have been committed. Okay? So yun ang quantum of proof. Pero yung huli, sinasabi ko kanina na may kulong, iba yon. Dadaan yan sa masusing paglilitis sa katarungan sa husgado. Court po yan, magkakailangan ng proof beyond reasonable doubt bago ka makulong. Mahabang proseso po yun. So itong nasa screen yan, civil liability. Pag sinabing civil, walang nakukulong sa civil. It's merely restitution for the damages done. Bayaran lang po yan ng damage. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yan. So again, yung kulong under RA 9184, not less than 6 years and 1 day, but not more than 15 years. Ito ay nasa RA 9184, Section 65. Doon naman sa anti-graft and corrupt, not less than 6 years and 1 month, but not more than 15 years. Pwedeng pagsamahin yan, nakulong ka na ng 6 years, 1 day, plus makukulong ka pa ng 6 years and 1 month up to 15. So pwede kang mag 30 years. Pero wala naman nakukulong ng 30 years, hanggang 20 lang yan normally. And pagka guilty ka sa RA 9184, dun sa limang sinabi ko kanina, nag-opening, premature opening. Number 2, delaying without justifiable cause. Number 3, influencing. Number 4, splitting of contract. Number 5, abuse of the hope. Pag guilty ka dyan, meron yung kasamang perpetual disqualification from public office. Hindi ka na rin pwedeng ma-hire pa sa gobyerno. And number 3, meron pang forfeiture in favor of the government ng mga ninakaw. Itong procurement, pwede pa rin yan pumasok sa plunder law, ha? Hindi lang. Maraming allied law talaga because kaya lang hindi sufficient yung ating time. So again, to summarize, itong RA 9184 will lead to both administrative, suspension to dismissal, civil, payment yan ng damages, or criminal, may kulong po yan. At ang ating, next slide please. Nako, ang daming knowledge check ulit. This would be the last knowledge check, I presume. Sir Marky.
Yes, sir. This is the last knowledge check for this lecture. So our last question is, Okay. Indirect request or receipt of gifts is not considered an offense. Is it true or false? Again, indirect request or receipt of gifts is not considered an offense. True or false? The correct answer, false.
Ayun, correct. Okay. Alam po ninyo, correct. So, natutuwa ako ang tataas ng mga sagot, tama eh. Kaya lang yung word na gift, you have to clarify yan. Yung value of the gift. Minsan kasi, binigyan ka ng isang box, sinlaki ng posporo ang box. Eh, ang laman pala niya, tikoy. You know what tikoy means? It's a small piece ng sugar-coated siya na candy siya. Binigyan ka ng tikoy. Is that a violation of Article 210? Bribery po ba yan kung ang laman tikoy? The answer is no. Kung binigyan ka ng kapirasong candy, it is not a gift as contemplated by the law. Pero same box containing a diamond, that is bribery. So yun yung pag-treat mo sa gift. Case to case po ang pag-appreciate. Actually, I heard one time si President Duterte nagsabi okay daw yung minimal gift in times of Christmas. Sinagot siya ni Senator Lacson. And I think Senator Lacson is correct at the time na sinabi niyang bawal pa rin because there's a law prohibiting public officer to receive gifts, no matter how modest yung gift, when it would while yung giver is having transaction with the public officer. So ganun po yon. So I am happy nakita. Now to summarize, remember po as observers po from the civil society organization, again for emphasis and gusto kong maipatagos sa puso ng bawat isang participants today na in performing your function, the law is giving you your function during as observer, during the bidding process, the law is giving you the same power given to that of the Commission on Audit. Kaya nga yung observers tatlo eh, one from COA, one from NGO, civil society, and private sector. Tatlo yan. Co-equal kayo pagdating sa power, duties, and responsibilities as observer. So, sacred po itong role ninyo. Again, gusto ko sanang maisip nyo na hindi pala basta-basta itong role ko as observer because my presence would either result into successful procurement. When you say successful procurement, procurement on time, in full, and without error. Or yung hindi nyo pag-submit ng observer's report might lead to the presumption of regularity na nagkaroon ng nakawan, lugi sa gobyerno at nagkaroon ng corrupt government. Pag sinabing corrupt government, bulok na sistema ng gobyerno. Ang corrupt is bulok, rotten practice. All right? So I think that's the last slide. Next slide, sir, please. O wala na. That would be the completion of our mission to discuss ethics in matters involving government procurement. Okay, Sir Marky, please.
All right. So thank you so much, Attorney Villanueva, for giving us a comprehensive overview of the ethics in government procurement. Again, at this point, we will take a 10-minute break, and after the break, our research speaker will join us again for the open forum. So if you have questions on topic presented by Attorney Villanueva, please do drop them at the Zoom chat box. Of course, our viewers in Facebook Live may also drop their question using the comment section. With that, thank you and stay with us.
Starting a new procurement activity? Do you want to quickly create your bidding documents? You need something that will provide a secure, straightforward, and customizable way to build your bid docs. Introducing the Government Procurement Policy Board Philippine Bidding Documents Builder. Accessed through the GPPB online portal, the PBD Builder enables you to build your bidding documents from scratch. The online preparation of PBDs will save you time, energy, and resources during the procurement planning stage.
It's so easy to build your bid docs. First, be sure that you are your procuring entity's principal or alternate authorized representative for posting of required procurement information in the GPPB online portal. Select the PBD in the menu bar of the GPPB online portal to access the PBD Builder. Click the Posted PBDs in the drop-down and log in into the system by entering your username and password and selecting the Procuring Entity Radio button. While logged in, you would be able to access the drop-down choices under the PBD menu, specifically the preparation of PBDs for goods, the preparation of PBDs for infrastructure, and the PBD notices.
From the PBD drop-down choices, select Prepare PBD Goods or Prepare PBD Infrastructure depending on your procurement project. Encode the required information. Click the radio buttons or drop-down choices. Or upload the required documents using the Upload File button. Remember, those with red asterisks are mandatory fields and should be filled out. After all the required data in the invitation to bid are entered, click the labeled PBD section button at the bottom of the page to move to the next pages of the PBD Builder. The system has a Save button at the end of every page that allows you to save a draft version of the PBDs when some of the mandatory data are still missing. After all required data are entered on the last page of the PBD Builder, click the Submit button at the bottom of the page.
The draft PBDs may be viewed under the drop-down labeled PBD Notices. This drop-down opens to a page showing a table where data is displayed in columns as derived from the information you entered or encoded. Click the View Approve PBD to view or download the drafted public bidding documents. If the draft needs editing, just click the Edit PBD link. You can navigate to a specific section by clicking on the section name on top of the page. In approving the draft, click the View Approve PBD link for the specific project. A page will open where you can upload an image of the Bids and Awards Committee chairperson's signature, signifying its approval, and tick the box confirming the authority of the person approving the draft public bidding document. Click the Approve PBD button to finalize the documents. After clicking this, the public bidding documents can no longer be edited.
The web-page version of the finalized PBD can be seen by clicking the View PBD link under the View Approved PBD column. The View Approved PBD link disappears if the PBD has already been approved and finalized. You can generate a copy of the PBD in the portable document file version by using the View PBD link under the View PDF column. And finally, the soft copy of the approved PDF format may be saved using the web-based downloading or printing options. Once printed, it's ready for posting within the premises of your agency and uploading to the PhilJEPs and your agency's websites to comply with the posting requirements under the procurement rules.
Let the PBD Builder help you build your bid docs without breaking a sweat. The GPPD Philippine Bidding Documents Builder, procurement planning and bid docs preparation made easy.
Surprise!
Wow! Bahay-bahayan!
Ganda, no? Ginawa namin yan, Nak, para sa'yo.
Pero teka, saan na napunta yung mga halaman ko? Tsaka, bakit tabingi yung bahay?
Ay! Nagiba agad!
Sayang na ang pera, muntik pang masaktan ang bata. Dapat talaga inaaral ng maigi ang instructions at hindi minamadali ang paggawa. Sa gobyerno natin, gusto natin ng matibay at pulidong infrastruktura para masigurong tatagal ito at ligtas ang mga gagamit. Dapat dumaan sa maayos na proseso ng pagpili ng contractor upang matiyak na sulit ang gastos. Oh, huwag munang magkamot ng ulo. Madali lang ang procurement. Hindi ito komplikado. Kailangan lang ng masusing pagpaplano at pagsunod sa proseso na itinakda ng Republic Act 9184. Ang RA 9184, mas kilala bilang Government Procurement Reform Act o GPRA, ay ang batas na nagtakda ng tamang proseso sa pagprocure ng pampublikong infrastruktura ng gobyerno. Kasama dito ang pagpapagawa, pagpapaganda, pag-aayos, pagkukumpuni o pagbabalik sa dati, pagpapanatili at pag-iba ng mga kalsada, tulay, gusali at iba pang infrastruktura ng pamahalaan. Ang buong proseso ng pag-procure ng infrastructure project ay parehas lang ng sa goods. Ipagkakaiba lang sa ilang mga dokumento, sa pamantayan ng pag-evaluate at sa bilang ng araw ng pagitan sa bawat stage. Nagsisimula pa rin sa procurement planning ang proseso para matukoy ang prioridad ng gobyerno. Pero sa pag-procure ng infrastructure project, mas maraming pagsusuri, pag-aaral, at paghahanda ng kinakailangan bago ito masimulan, tulad ng feasibility study, right-of-way acquisition, pagbuo ng program of work, pag-compute ng budget, at detailed engineering design.
Detailed engineering design? No sleep!
Relax! Ito ay ang resulta ng maraming aktibidad para masigurong ang infrastruktura ay magiging matatag at ligtas para sa mga gagamit nito. Naaalala mo yung tabing ng bahay-bahayan kanina? Hindi kasi pinag-aralan ng maigi, kaya dapat lang na detalyado ang engineering design.
Ano naman yung right-of-way acquisition? Big words, ha?
Simple lang yan. Bago simulan ang paggawa, kailangan tiyakin ng gobyerno na may sapat na daanan ang mga apektado ng infrastruktura. Parang sa pagtayo ng bahay-bahayan, hindi dapat inalis ang mga halaman nang walang paalam. Nagre-resulta ang procurement planning sa APP ng ahensya. Dapat idiin na anumang hindi nakalista sa APP ay hindi maaaring ipagawa ng ahensya para masiguro ang matalinong paggamit ng pondo.
Oh, tapos?
Sa pre-procurement conference naman, inaalam kung tapos na ang detailed engineering design at available na ang right-of-way site na madadaanan ng proyekto. Dito kasi, matitiyak na handa na ang ahensya na i-publish ang invitation to bid. Mahalaga na kumpleto at wasto ang lahat ng dokumento at malinaw ang pagkakasaad ng program of work and requirements sa bidding documents para walang aberya sa implementasyon. Sunod-sunod na ang proseso ng paglathala ng invitation to bid, pagkandak ng pre-bid conference, at submission of bids. Tandaan na ang bid ay dapat na selyado at naglalaman ng dalawang hiwalay at selyadong envelopes kung saan nakapaloob ang mga required technical at financial documents. Ang technical envelope ay naglalaman ng mga dokumento na magpapatunay na eligible ang bidder at may technical na kakayanang gawin ang infrastructure project. Dapat kasama rito ang kopya ng lisensya ng bidder bilang contractor na galing sa Philippine Contractors Accreditation Board. Ang financial envelope naman ay naglalaman ng presyo na iniaalok ng bidder para sa proyekto. Gamit ang simpleng pass or fail preliminary examination, bubusisiin ang mga dokumentong nakapaloob sa technical at financial envelopes. Kapag kulang o mali ang dokumentong nasa technical envelope ng bidder, hindi na bubuksan ang kanyang financial envelope. Ibig sabihin, tanggal na siya sa bidding. Kapag na-scrutinize na ang lahat ng technical envelopes, saka palang bubuksan ang financial envelopes ng mga nakapasang bidders. Laging tatandaan na hindi dapat mas mataas sa ABC ang presyo na iniaalok ng bidder. Anumang bid ang mas mataas sa ABC ay matatanggal rin.
Bakit?
Ito ay para masiguro ng gobyerno na hindi ito gagastos ng higit pa sa naibudget para sa proyekto. Isa sa ilalim naman sa bid evaluation ang mga nakapasang bids upang una, masigurong kumpleto at naaayon sa pamantayan ang mga impormasyon. At ikalawa, masigurong hindi labis sa ABC ang presyong iniaalok ng bidder. Pagkatapos nito, ay irarank ang mga nakapasang bids mula sa pinakamababang presyo. Ang pinakamababang bid ang tataguri ang lowest calculated bid o LCB na isasalang sa post-qualification.
Post-qualification?
Ito ang proseso kung saan sinusuri ng BAC o ng Technical Working Group ang mga dokumento at impormasyong isinumite para matiyak na lahat ay tama at nasa ayos. Sinusuri rin ang mga nakaraang kontrata, pati na ang experience ng mga taong i-assign sa proyekto. Dapat hindi makitaan ng pagkukulang gaya ng delays o mababang kalidad ng trabaho para makapasa. Pati ang pinansyal na katayuan ng LCB ay tinitignan din.
Kumbinsihin mo pa kami!
Sure! Sa ganitong paraan, masisiguro ng BAC na ang mananalong bidder ay hindi lamang basta mababa ang presyo, kundi ito ay technically qualified. Kapag napatunayan sa pagsusuri na ang LCB ay nakapasa sa legal, technical, at financial requirements, ito ay tatawaging bidder na may lowest calculated responsive bid o LCRB na irerekomenda na gawaran ng kontrata. Ayan! Madali lang at walang hassle ang proseso ng procurement sa gobyerno. Kapag naplano, malamang walang palpak. Sa ganyang paraan, walang nasasayang. Tiyak na best quality at the best price ay swak na swak. Approve?
Approve!
All right. So with that, we will go straight to the open forum. Our first question. can the losing bidder still do project implementation if they or if they did some internal arrangement?
Parang limited yung facts. Thank you for this question. Can the losing bidder still do project implementation if they, winner and loser, did some internal arrangement? No, this is what we call collusion or connivance. This is prohibited by law actually. Actually, sister companies with the same resources cannot join together in a competitive public bidding. So dito, the more reason na yung winner and loser, the moment they have this internal arrangement, this is illegal. The internal arrangement is null and void. So the losing bidder has no business performing, doing the job that is supposed to be performed by the winner. Okay, so take note of that. This is a form of illegal connivance or collusion, especially so na if it is a secret agreement. Sabi ko nga kanina, collusion, ang element niyan is a secret agreement for some wrongful purposes. So hindi po pwede yan. Kasi ang supplier or builder on record, constructor on record, is yung nanalong lowest calculated responsive. Itong talo, they cannot continue. Ang lumalabas dito, yung ongoing project nakasubcon sa kanya or hindi man nakasubcon sa kanya, ginagamit lang yung mga resources niya. So this is an illegal arrangement and this is proscribed by RA 9184 and by Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act law. Next slide. Next question, please.
Next question. Since observers may not be allowed to take video or picture of documents and proceedings, does observers' report or narrative alone hold water in court proceedings?
Of course, yes. No, yung prohibition on taking pictures, videos of the proceeding, it is on a case-to-case basis. Remember, we in COMELEC, ang experience namin, we even invite ABS-CBN at the time, Channel 7, we invite Channel 5, and all the 5 big networks. They have designated spots. So even our observers, they are at liberty to capture, take photographs, picture, and the video of the proceedings. That's how transparent COMELEC is. So there are other agencies that would regulate, that is okay. Now, but the question is, when it comes to actual court litigation, the narration or the testimony of the observers will be given weight, great weight actually. Malaki po ang evidentiary weight ng testimony of the observer. Minsan mas mabisa pa siya sa video because the video would not capture exactly the exact event, but the bidder who is actually present, who witnessed the entire event, can effectively narrate all the events that transpired. Yung video kung saan lang nakapokus yung observer nakikita niya bigayan sa likod kahit nandiyan. And the answer here is yes, it will not only hold water in court, but it has a great probative value. It will be given great weight. In case of conflict pa nga, mas binibigyan ng weight ang testimony given in good faith. At saka may presumption ng regularity sa inyo. All right? So ano po siya? The answer here is a big letter YES. Yes po. It will hold water in court.
Okay. Next question. The observer should keep eye on fraudulent practices or /collusions. Therefore, does the observer can or may go to the procuring entity office anytime, even if the observer is not invited?
Well, this was asked earlier. Sabi nga kanina ni attorney a while back, competitive public bidding is supposed to be open to the public. And observers shall at all times be given access to procurement-related document. So, ang question niya kasi is, does the observer may the observer be allowed to enter the premises even if the observer is not invited? To my mind, yes. Yes. And this time, hindi na siya treated as observer. Kasi yung observer, that is a nomenclature defined under the law under Section 13. Those who are invited from civil society, from COA, NGO, and private. Tatlo yan. Now, if you're not invited, but you would like to witness, the concept or public policy of public bidding that it should be open to the public will now prevail. Nandun siya as witness na lang or as not observer na, as a guest. In which case, hindi na mag-a-apply sa kanya yung right niya to ask for documents. Baka hindi siya invited eh. But if the question merely is he would like to witness the proceedings, pwede po yan. In fact, kami noon may mga ambassadors sa COMELEC. I remember darating yung mga ambassadors. They would observe the proceedings kasi may mga foreign bidders eh. Tinitignan nila and that is allowed. They will be merely treated as guests. May ID kasi kami. Yung ID ng observer, identified yon. They have designated place. May ID yung bidders. Nakalagay, just like in PITC, Philippine International Trading Corporation. Eh pag umattend ka but you are neither observer or a bidder, bibigyan ka na ID guest. Doon ka sa space for the guest. Yan. All right. So that's the answer po here. Even if not invited, you have the right to witness. Kahit sa court, hindi ka naman invited eh, pero the trial should be done in public. Therefore, you may attend it and pipirma ka ng guest book. Yan. Next question, please.
Next question. Were there any persons penalized or imprisoned in violation of these bad practices?
Ay, napakarami po. In my daily experience of attending almost daily cases in Sandigan Bayan and in the Supreme Court, up to the level ng Supreme Court, ang dami pong nakukulong at napipenalize for violating RA 9184. Okay? Marami ring na-acquit. Marami ring walang kasalanan, nakikita ko na nagkakaroon ng parusa na kulong. Even if, and I would like to really share this in private na sa GPPB, yung mga nakikita kong actual trial in court na may mga mali. But ang tanong, I can name a lot of persons na penalized or nakulong for violating RA 9184. Napakarami po nila. Okay, napakarami po. Ayaw ko lang mag-name, mag-drop ng names, but the answer here is napakarami. Sa LGU lang, sa local government, may mga mayor diyan, governor, convicted. Okay? Ang daming politiko na nakakulong ngayon for violating RA 9184. Okay? Marami ring natanggal na sa serbisyo. Hindi nga nakulong pero dismissed from service with perpetual disqualification, administratively charged. Mga mayor yan, hindi na sila pwedeng magtakbo unless yung case is pending before the Supreme Court or Court of Appeals as the case may be. Next, Sir Marty.
Next question. Is there a possibility that the observer who are considered as volunteer be subject to lawful suit in participating the bidding process? Please cite instances if there any.
Now, ang take-off point dito would be conspiracy. If there would be conspiracy, the act of one will be the act of all. Just to be able to illustrate conspiracy. In a rape case, rape for example, yung dalawang humawak ng kamay, yung dalawang humawak ng paa, at isa lang yung nasa ibabaw, yang limang yan ay liable for rape. Conspiracy eh. At yung humawak ka lang ng pinto, tagabantay, kasali ka doon. Now, if the observer, in this case, nag-post siya as volunteer, pero volunteer ka nga, pero yung isang bidder, ikaw ang nag-prepare ng bidding docs. Okay? If that could be established in court that observer who acted or posed as a mere volunteer, siya ang nag-prepare ng bidding docs, dama yan sa case of conspiracy. Okay? That would be a classic example of the act of one is the act of all. Kasi dito, pagdating sa crime, laging may element. Pwedeng mauwi. It could lead to conspiracy in the commission of crimes. Okay? Maraming instances po ito. Kaya ang observer, hindi pwedeng, kala nyo, ganun lang ang trabaho ninyo. may liability po dito. For example, namigay ang bidder ng pera, envelopes 6, 5 lang yung members ng back. Saan natin bibigay itong isang envelope? Ayun si observer, bigay na lang natin ka observer. By receiving it, that observer becomes part of the cycle or of conspiracy. Damay din siya dyan. Okay? So yan po yan. Ang ano niya, depensa na lang niya sa court later on kung sabi niya hindi siya liable. All right? Next slide po. Next question. Please.
Question. Kung nanalo na po ang bidder sa bidding, pwede na po ipasok sa employment ang relative ng observer? Is it conflict of interest still in effect after the bidding process?
All right. Now, yung kanina, yung receiving employment within 1 year yon. Now, if after 1 year, and that applies only to public officer, and that does not apply to observers, strictly speaking. So, strictly speaking, hindi po walang matitrace na batas na bawal ipasok yung anak ng observer doon sa company na sumasali sa bidding. However, by the very nature of the concept of conflict of interest, hindi ka na impartial eh. Ang observer, take note, unbiased mind dapat po kayo. Kaya kayo na ganyan to observe that tatlo po yung titignan nyo. Dapat every bidder must be placed in equal footing. Yun ang tinitignan ninyo. Kung kayo mismo hindi na equal footing kasi isang bidder may pabor kayo, there's obviously a conflict of interest. So ako dito, is conflict of interest still after the bidding process? My answer is yes. Yes. So much so that if in the event that after the bidding process, tinanggap yung anak mo, you have to resign as observer. You have to inform both your company and the procuring entity of such event. So conflict of interest pa rin po yun, strictly speaking. In fact kasi alam nyo ang RA 3019, both public and private pinaparusahan dyan. Both acts na in consideration of future benefits. Kasi po ang sagot ko dyan, after the bidding process na employee, ang question dyan, hindi na ba sasali uli ang nanalo? Wala na bang chance na magbibid pa siya sa other company? If that is the situation, there would now be a conflict of interest. So in short, the observer's relative, yun namang relative up to what degree? Hindi rin, silent din. Ang first degree nga is anak, magulang, first degree yan. Lolo, apo, second degree. Third degree, auntie, uncle. Fourth degree, pinsan, first cousin. Yan yung up to fourth degree, pinagbabawal sa batas. Pero sa observer, honestly, the law is silent about that prohibition on conflict of interest. But in order to ensure impartiality, in order to ensure independence of mind, and to be able to perform your function consistent with the requirement of the law na para kayong COA, hindi po dapat mangyari ito. Alright? So thank you. Next slide, please.
Okay, our next question. Sir, may babalikan lang po muna tayo ulit na tanong.
Opo.
For clarification lang po ulit daw. So,
yes, please. If
ito
they
po yung
may...
tanong, sir. Yung the observer should keep eye on fraudulent practices / collusions. Therefore, does the observer can or may go to the procuring entity office anytime, even if the observer is not invited?
So my answer a while back is that if you are not invited, you are not an observer. That's the rule. Okay? You are merely going to the office as a private individual, and you will be treated and afforded to all the rights and privileges given to a mere guest. Mere guest. You would redound to the level of a mere guest if you are not invited as observer. So that's the clarification then. And then public office is open, supposed to be for access of any private individual. Even the Malacanang, the president is saying, anybody is, this office is open. Anybody is welcome. But may limitation na yan. They cannot anymore secure documents available to observers precisely because they were never invited as such. Yun po yung sagot ko dito. Okay. Ang question kasi, can they go to the office at any time? The word anytime is misleading. In fact, merong official hours ang government, 8 to 5. So it's not anymore 8 to 5. If I am to be, strict about my answer. But my point here is, in matters involving procurement, rule number 1, if you are not given the invitation, wala kang invites, as observer, you cannot act as observer. You cannot compel the procuring entity to designate you as an observer if they have already invited other observers. Yun yung tanong kanina sa LGU, kay attorney. Paano kung may designated na sila or preferred observers? Well, you cannot stop the LGUs from sending invites to their preferred observers. Ayan. So, yun po yun. So, dito, mere guest ka na lang and you cannot invoke all the rights, duties, and privileges that should be afforded to observers. From access to information, yung non-disclosure agreement, that will not be applicable to him or to her. Thank you, sir. I hope I was able to clarify this question.
For our last question.
Yan, ang gusto ko, last question.
With all those fraudulent acts enumerated, can you give us instruction on how we can observe those? Because in reality, the observers are invited to the proceedings, but not in paper training. How can the observers identify those acts?
Yan. Ang sabi ko nga kanina, there is a separate module. I remember sometime, I think about 2009, meron kaming training, ang tawag namin, pitfalls in government procurement. Naka-enumerate yun lahat ng dangers. What are the acts, illegal acts? From advertisement, nakalagay na siya. From procurement planning, nakalagay na. Branding. No time na yun kasi branding is strictly prohibited. Nakalagay na doon yung specification as to quantity. Ang guide po dyan, 5. Yung fraudulent act. Sabi ko nga para kayong COA. Ito ang titignan niyo po in reality. Merong IIUU, EEUUI. Yan ang COA. Can I share this on screen? May I be allowed po to share just one screen para ma-enlighten sila? Just one screen. Ito po yung gusto kong...
Sure, sir.
Yeah. Ito po. It's on screen now. Ayan. Ito po. Yan po yung observers kayo. Ito po ang titignan ninyo. Sabi ko para kayong COA eh. Yan po, as observer titignan nyo. Regular ba ang proseso? Yan ang unang titignan ng observer. Meaning to say, may invitation ba? Tama ba yung timelines? Wala ba ditong beyond the from submission to opening, submission, opening up to award? Hindi ba yan umabot na ng beyond 90 days? Kasi illegal, irregular na yon. Ito bang procurement hindi excessive? Titignan nyo rin. Halimbawa, sa bidding, nakita nyo na procurement of air conditioning unit for 5 offices. Pero bakit 15? 5 lang yung bibilin, 5 lang yung opisinang paglalagyan ng aircon. Bakit 15? O excessive na yon. Doon yan po ang mga tinitignan para kayong COA auditor. Just like I have mentioned a while back. Number 3, bumibili ng printer. Ang printer mo is, ang size ng printer mo is pang wide range. Yung ginagamit sa mga plano, simpleng office ka lang. Unnecessary naman po yun. Number 3, unconscionable. Yung unconscionable, if the amount is shocking to the conscience of man. Ito pong printer, bakit teka muna ho? Nakikita nyo, as observer. Nakita nyo na yung price is 30,000 pesos. Yung printer na yan is only 9,000 pesos. Then you can react. Yan po yung mga titignan nyo. Unconscionable po ang tawag dyan. Overpriced. Extravagant. Nakita nyo nang bumibili ng vehicle. Yung vehicle is for the for the office lang ng GSO. Pero ang binibili is Toyota Tundra. Ba't napakamahal? Extravagant po yan. Bawal po yan sa batas. So, yan ho yung 5. Just to put emphasis dun sa tanong na alin-alin po ba specifically in reality. Kaya kami noon, this 5 IUUEE, meron kaming 39 enumeration yan. Insofar as 9184 pa lang. Pagdating sa Anti-Graft and Revised Penal Code, meron kaming 200 enumeration of acts. So, when I was the Dean of the Law Center of PLM, meron kami niya noon na talagang nakadiscuss yan in relation also to admin disciplinary. So, to our beloved observer na nag-propound ng question, ito po yung 5 initially na basic na dapat alam nyo. Pinakamahalaga dyan yung regular. When you say regular, it complies with all the requirements set forth by prevailing rules, laws, and regulation. Yun ang regular. The moment na nag-violate ng law, rules, and regulation, ang tawag mo niya irregular. Kaya yung observer, ang check mo lang muna during the pre-bid conference, regular po ba ito? Yes. Excessive po ba ito? No. Is this unnecessary? No, necessary to. Is this unconscionable? No also. Kaya dapat yan ang sagot mo during the pre-bid sa 5 na yan, no. If the answer is no, valid yung proseso. If your answer is yes in one of the aspects, then it should call for immediate action. Yan. Thank you for the question. I think that would be the last question, Sir Mark.
Yes, sir. And that concludes the open forum. With that, we would like to thank our second research speaker this morning, Attorney Lawrence P. Villanueva. Thank you so much, Attorney Villanueva, for graciously accepting our invitation to be part of this online training. Again, if you have more questions, you may still ask them out even after this webinar by visiting slido.com. All you have to do is to just type in the event code #governmentprocurementph, to which the GPPB-TSO will answer through an issuance or through FAQs.
All right.
Again, thank you, Attorney Villanueva.
Yes, sir. Permission to leave, Your Honor. Bye-bye po. All right.
Sir, kung okay lang po sana mag-group photo pa tayo mamaya. Wait lang po.
Oh, sure. Okay. All right.
So before we proceed to the final reminders, let me provide you a recap of our 2-day online training. On our first session for this program, Attorney Zenaida Bautista Biteng discussed to us the key features of Government Procurement Reform Act. She also discussed the overview of the standard bidding procedure for goods, infrastructure projects, and consulting services. Attorney Biteng also enlightened us on the composition, roles, and functions of a procurement organization and shared to us the transparency measures in government procurement. On our second session, Attorney Soliva expounded to us the qualifications, responsibility of an observers, which includes having fundamental knowledge on RA 9184 and rights of an observers to attend, record, and access procurement-related documents upon request. He also emphasized that observers' report is significant in so many ways, as it ensures integrity, opportunity to address challenges, enhancement, and policy development. Attorney Soliva also enumerates the code of conduct that an observers must have any time in government procurement processes, highlighting the do's and don'ts and tools and instruments' vital role. While for our third and last topic, which was discussed by Attorney Villanueva, the lecture focused on the general principle and considerations, especially on the importance of ethics in public procurement, public trust, and ethics versus integrity. Attorney Villanueva also enlightened us on the highest standards of ethics, prohibited cases, offenses, and penalties under RA 9184 and RA 3019. So with that, allow me to make a few reminders. So first, we would like to remind again our Zoom participants to please register to the online training management system of the GPPB-TSO by visiting the link flash in your screens and using the control number emailed to you by our event secretariat. Also, please accomplish the participant's profile sheet through Google Form by visiting the link or scanning the QR code flash in your screens. Rest assured that the information gathered from you for this online training will be treated with utmost confidentiality consistent with the provision of the Data Privacy Act. Lastly, for the final announcement, please be advised that certificate of participation shall only be issued to the participants upon the completion of the general evaluation, module evaluation, and resource person evaluation, which is accessible via the OTMS portal. Just log in using the link given to you by our secretariat. And now, may I respectfully request everyone to please turn on their webcams for our group photo opportunity. We will be having a 3 shots. So show us your best smile. So let's start with our first shot. In 3, 2, and 1. For our second shot, in 3, 2, and 1. And for our last shot, 3, 2, and 1. And on that note, that concludes the last day of the online training for civil society organizations on Republic Act 9184 and its 2016 revised implementing rules and regulation. This has been your host, Marky Duetes. See you all again next time. Thank you and stay safe.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, attorney. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all.
To leave.
Thank you, attorney. Thank you po.
Stay safe.
Thank you to everyone.
Thank you po. Salamat po. Please don't forget po to fill out our evaluation po.
Pwede ka mapilula ipas? Ya, balik ka ninyo kaya ito muna thank you.
Kaya sana, kanya lang tawag sa amin ito. Wala alaw na.
Can we request for the link to the evaluation?
Control number.
My God, hindi ko siya ma-outfit.